Morning, everyone. Call the Montgomery County Planning Commission monthly board meeting for July 13th to order. The record shows that we currently have 6 board members: myself, Dulcie, Nicole, John Ernst, Jonathan Rindy, and Charlie Renetta. Excused from today is Jill and Obed. And did we hear from Bob?
We did not hear from Bob.
Okay, so we'll wait to see if he joins us. Forum, so we'll get started with the meeting. Are there any board comments? Jonathan, anything from you?
I just have one addition to the minutes, if we get to that.
Let's wait, hold up on that. We'll get to the minutes in
Okay.
a second. Any general board comments?
No general board comments, thank you.
Anybody in the room? Charlie?
None.
Nicole?
None.
Dulcie?
Good.
Okay. I mean, peer pressure, I guess I won't have any comments. All right, well then we'll take a, is there a motion? Next order of business is to approve the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the board meeting minutes for June 8th?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any comments or corrections? Jonathan?
Yeah, my notes reflect when we talked about the implementation grant awards, that the board decided there should be a post-award engineers certification. I don't, Bob or John might have made that suggestion, and I thought we all agreed that that would be a good addition to the program, but it's not reflected in the minutes.
So can we add a comment about that? I think I do remember that conversation also. I think it was something we discussed and put into the program requirements for next year.
Yeah, I can't remember if we made flat, put it in or look into it further, but we can go back and address that.
I think we should just note the minutes that it was discussed about a post-construction certification and how that gets reflected within the program requirements next year. We'll tackle that when the time comes. So, but we can make those meeting minutes corrections. Any others from anybody?
That's it for me, thank you.
Okay. So with no other comments, all those in favor of approving the meeting minutes with the correction by Jonathan indicate by saying aye. Aye. Unanimous. Move on to our next order of business, public comment. Take public comment on any business related to the Planning Commission. If there's any member of the public that is joining us here in the room or online, if you're online, please unmute yourself. Give us your name, municipality you reside in. Any public comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to our first formal agenda item, County Climate Action Plan, and I'll call on Jon Lesher. You done, John?
Good one.
I see we have the beach goer Brandon on with us.
Listen, I'm on Team Brandon with this. I have 3 little boys. I spend my summer just covered in sand. And
they're happiest at the beach.
oh yeah,
They can yell, they can scream, they toss things, nobody really minds.
my oldest is actually learning how to surf.
Nice.
So he's like the big kahuna out there. So yeah, no, that's why Brandon and I are presenting together. We are no longer going to present about the climate action plan. We're just going to show you beach pictures of our plan. And you guys can all suffer through that.
The beach is moving closer to us, right?
Exactly. Like,
There you go.
now it's going to be in the headlines. Environmental planner loves climate change. Commute to beach will be shorter. Well, in all seriousness, thank you very much for having us. For those of you, it's good to see all of you in person. And for those of you who are online, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm Jon Lesher. I'm the Environmental Planning Assistant Manager. I am joined today, Wizard of Oz style, floating head by Brandon Ford, who is the Springfield Township Assistant Manager. He is also the current treasurer of the Montgomery County Consortium of Communities. He is the co-chair of the Montgomery County Resiliency Partnership and also the co-chair of the Wissahickon Clean Water Partnership Management Committee. I got it all out there. That's all I needed to memorize was that.
I'm not sure how he gets to the beach then.
It's too
A
busy.
lot of remote meetings. Zoom has made it easier.
But as you can tell, he is a heavy hitter in the county, and it is our pleasure to have him. He has been he's been the driving force behind this plan.
Thanks, John. And if I could just interject real quick, it's not just me. John has been phenomenal, and speaking for everyone involved in this project, we appreciate the continued support and assistance from the County Planning Commission.
Thank you, Brandon. That's why I talked about the beach, so you could say nice things about us. The agenda for this meeting is twofold. One, you have what we see here. We want to walk you through the draft climate action plan. Make sure that you are aware of it, what it will contain, its purpose, and what it will hopefully do. But the second agenda, which is not on here, which is extremely important, we are still in a draft phase of this plan. We are beginning the public outreach. And this board is a very well-informed public. So we are really looking for your input on this plan. I have my notepad and my pencil. I want to be able to take notes. I want to be able to get your input. So throughout this presentation, at any point, feel free to stop us, interject, give us your thoughts, your ideas, questions, whatever the case may be. And Brandon will interject from the internet whenever he wants to. He will also take some of the speaking roles for some of these slides. We are talking about climate action. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. We've covered this before, most recently when we discussed the Montgomery County potential climate change potential vulnerability analysis. But basically, to set the context, it is going to get hotter. It is going to get wetter. The heat we will have more days of over 90 degrees. They will be in a succession. The temperatures at night will not drop down as much. So we will have oppressive, longer stretches of heat with higher humidity. Our storm events will be more frequent and they will be more powerful. We will see storms, rainfalls in shorter periods of times than we've experienced before. And that in a lot of ways, as we can tell through our recent storm events, that our stormwater management has not been designed to handle. So the science behind this plan has been provided mostly by DVRPC. I will give them a shout out, even though they are not here. They've been able to do a tremendous amount of work with federal funding to downscale climate change data for our region. And they've done a number of publications around climate change. So if you're ever looking for data about climate change for our region, DVRPC is the standard. And that is what we've been using in all of our planning documents, including what we call MCA 2050. I kind of like it because it sounds a little bit like a member of the Beastie Boys. So that's why when I refer to it as MCA 2050, you know what I'm talking about.
And this is where I'll chime in, John, just to kind of give you a little bit of a background as to, how we got here. The Consortium of Communities, for those who are not aware, is a voluntary association of municipal managers and officials from Montgomery County. We represent about 82% of the entire population of Montgomery County, consisting of about 51 out of the 62 municipal entities in the county. So, we represent a lot of people. And, as John alluded to, climate change is one of those hot button issues that have only grown in importance. Anyone who's, been in the area for quite a while knows that, flooding is becoming more frequent. And, all you have to do is turn on the news to see the wildfires over on the West Coast. So, as officials in our respective communities, we see this at the local level, and we see, climate change having a direct impact on how our municipalities operate. So in about 2020, many of the municipal managers agreed to form a subcommittee, so to speak, And that's what the Resiliency Partnership is. It's a subsect of the consortium of communities dedicated to talking about climate action and climate resilience. We do have a mission statement up there. I'm not going to read it verbatim, but essentially it's kind of to facilitate collaboration on on climate action. And a lot of this was initiated through a grant from DEP. Next slide, please.
What's ICLEI?
So ICLEI stands for the Local Governments for Sustainability. And they were the technical partners for the DEP grant program that we got our hands on, that funded a lot of the technical assistance we received early on in this process.
What type of organization is ICL?
International.
They are an international nonprofit, I believe.
ICLEI does stand for something, but they realized that nobody could remember what it stands for, so they no longer go by an acronym. They are literally just ICLEI.
Yeah.
And they gave up the fight.
Yeah. So, to our earlier point, this is primarily being coordinated as a partnership between the consortium and the Planning Commission. Again, thank you for your continued support. And all this was funded through a grant that DEP received from the U.S. Department of Energy, specifically to promote the development of climate action plans throughout the state. We received additional assistance through our ICLEI and DEP partnership from DVRPC, who provided a lot of the raw data that we use in a lot of our analyses, as well as we received a couple of students from Bucknell University to help us do a lot of the grunt work.
And just clarify for me, the consortium, as I remember, were the municipalities of the first.
We don't distinguish. We do have first class.
No longer, there's no distinguishing. At one point, they were first class as opposed to second class. Now it's everybody.
Well, we welcome anyone with a council manager form of government.
Okay.
Yep. So we have boroughs, home rule municipalities, first class, second class townships.
You're talking about, like, there's other organizations.
What am I going to
differentiate.
Nato?
No, Mankato used to be second class. So that one years ago. And the consortium, when I went to see them originally, were first class. But then there was a little bit, there must have been a change at some point. So now.
I remember that. I think the consortium has always been
I think
any
it is,
municipality. I think.
No. Whatever it is, it's not important. Thank you.
And I will say, we do partner with the consortium to help run the resiliency partnership. And we open that up to every community in the county. So that other 18% that's not represented in the consortium, they do get an invite to resiliency partnership. And the work that we're doing here will cover the whole county and not just consortium community.
Yep, that's an important distinction. Thanks, John. Could you next slide, please?
Again.
So in terms of the structure and kind of who's leading the effort for this process, we can kind of think of two major groups. We have a technical team, which consists of myself, John, Ellis Foley, who was one of the environmental planners at MCPC. Also Paloma Villa, who's a sustainability manager in Lower Merion. Sean Halbum, who's the assistant manager in White Marsh, as well as Shauna Barnhart, who is a professor at Bucknell University. And she oversaw the students who helped us crunch the data, so to speak. We also have a steering committee consisting of elected officials or volunteers from across Montgomery County listed on this slide. And we wanted to get representation from all across Montgomery County, not just the more populous South. We wanted to include Central Montco, Northern Montco. And the steering committee has met with the technical team a few times, and they kind of helped guide our direction in all of this. Next slide, please. Here are some of our accomplishments to date. This has been a pretty lengthy process. You know, part of the DEP grant that we received included several weeks of training with ICLEI and DEP to kind of use their tools and their technical expertise that was available to us through this grant. So we spent most of 2020 going through that program, as well as kind of collecting all the data from DVRPC from various greenhouse emission sources. For 2021, we kind of crunched those numbers. We kind of looked analytically at what those numbers meant. And we formed our steering committee to kind of present and act as a sounding board, so to speak. And now, you know, early 2022, we do have our strategies developed, and John will go through them a little bit more in detail a little bit later on. Next slide, please.
So I'm gonna hit on the plan's vision. This is the draft vision statement for the plan. This is really one of the first opportunities where I'm really looking for feedback from the audience. As you read this, if there is anything, as you know, through your planning work, the verbiage is important. Does the language on the screen reflect what we would want to see as a climate action vision for the county? You know, as you can see, and we will talk a little bit more, you know, we are talking about the people, businesses, and communities in Montgomery County. So this is a broad scope. You know, become healthier, sustainable, and more resilient to climate change. You know, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, transitioning to clean renewable energy and transportation, preserving our environment, and establishing a framework for regional collaboration. Thoughts? Going once.
So my first thought is, of course.
Yeah.
If you're doing a climate action plan, those are things that you want to achieve. Maybe it's the wrong place, but it's the plan's vision. I would look to see some specifics, more specifics within each of those 4 categories or 4 bullet points that relate to something that's going to be not necessarily unique, because I don't know that there's necessarily unique solutions that the counties, that municipalities within the county are going to come up with, but at least unique solutions or goals that Montgomery County and municipalities should strive to do within each of those bullet points.
Well, let's, as we go through, you know, by the time we get to the end, it'll be interesting to see whether you're like, oh, all right, that covers it.
Right, the information may be within the plan and everything, but the question is, does it want to also be referenced right from the beginning in the plan vision?
Well, I remember in college when I would write, and I'm sure a lot of us did that, when you have to write an essay, you start off with your introduction, you write the body, and then you go back and be like, oh, I didn't really write about what I first thought I was going to write about, and you go back and you change the introduction. So it'll be interesting to see as we go through and we go through the strategies and whatnot, whether we need to come back and revisit, whether we can do the vision better. To have that, you know, I always kind of refer to it as like almost your like Twitter statement. Like it's got to be that one statement that you can really point to, and whether this will reflect it. So,
Any other comments from anybody before John and Brandon move on?
Yeah, I have a comment. I really like having the reducing greenhouse emissions as being, you know, kind of first listed there. So many, I think, objections to going right away to transitioning to clean and renewable as well. We really need to reduce first. And so I think that is a good emphasis to have that as your first objective.
thank you. Yeah, it's always been our philosophy that, you know, the best energy is the energy you don't use. And there's no sense in transitioning to a different energy if you're just going to throw good energy out, leaky windows and things of that nature. So we wanted to reflect that core philosophy in this vision.
I also wanted to mention that some of the objections to RF 100 resolutions or clean energy resolutions is the use of the word renewable. So oftentimes the boards are asking to either drop it and just leave with clean and define what clean means. That could include the, I hate to say it, but nuclear. So I don't know whether that has been an issue that you're considering.
I will say, and Brady can chime in if you want, we have been, both the consortium and myself have worked with the Ready for 100 on many issues. In many presentations, we are in conversations with them. I had the same thought. It will be interesting to see what the RF 100's comments are on this plan. We have not sent it to them directly, but we will, because they are a vocal and worthwhile constituent. We want them to be supportive of it. So it will be interesting, because it does, like I said, the terminology can be tricky, and so we did want to. Our steering committee, the technical team in the steering committee, thought that having clean and renewable were the right way to go, but we'll throw it out there and see what happens.
Good.
So why don't we move on, and this we'll open it up to public comment on different parts of the presentation, but we do want to get through. We do want to get through most of. We have a defined time, so why don't we continue on? And I'll make sure that I'm more specific about who we're looking for comments from at certain times.
I just hear a voice coming from the ceiling, and I answer.
Thank you for your comments.
All right, so I can jump in here. So for the scope of the plan, as John said, although the consortium does not represent every community in Montgomery County, this plan will. So this plan is for the entire Montgomery County, regardless of whether you're a member of the consortium or not. And essentially, we want this plan to be a tool that will be adopted, endorsed, supported by municipalities across the board. It will ultimately be up to the municipalities whether or not they want to take what we write in the climate action plan and run with it. And it's not meant to be regulatory, it's clear, it's just meant to be a guidebook. Next slide, please.
So I do have one question. So will the plan, you say you don't want it to be regulatory, I get that. But will it make suggestions that may be useful to municipalities to incorporate into their ordinances?
Yes,
Absolutely.
Help to implement the suggestions through this plan?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. That's actually going to be the main chunk of this plan. We'll have a little educational section about climate change, kind of a little synopsis as to, where we are now. But for the most part, the big chunk of this plan will be suggestions and tools that municipalities like Springfield can just pick up and run with. So kind of just to give you a real quick synopsis of where we are based on the 2015 data available to us by DVRPC. We're looking at about 9.5 million metric tons of CO2 emissions. And we do have the breakdown there. Kind of the big three, so to speak, are residential, transportation, and then it says commercial, but that's mostly commercial and institutional. So anything that's non-residential is the biggest bite of the apple, so to speak.
So is there a way to understand that figure, like in a realistic manner? Like, is that based on, could you break it down to what based on the square footage of the county or square mile of the county? Like, is there something that could give people an understanding of how that number relates?
Yes, there is. Regrettably, it is not extremely simple because we use DVRPC's greenhouse gas emissions inventory, which is based on land use assumptions. So that, the methodology behind that is pretty complicated. Though I do think it is a very good point that in a plan like this, you may have the technical data, and we'll reference the methodology that was used by DVRPC to get our baseline. But to be able to translate that into something that is more relatable, I think is crucial.
So is there an understanding as to whether Montgomery County's numbers within the other similar first ring suburbs of a metropolitan area where our numbers stand? Is that understandable?
Yes.
Yes.
What you can do is through the DVRPC tool, which the plan links to that website, you can then you can compare Montgomery County to Chester County, you can compare Abington to Cheltenham, you can compare Abington to Marlboro. And you can see how the different communities relate and how you compare to.
Like,
similar-
could it be like population or density? Because, you know, Marlboro to Abington, what's gonna tell you? Yeah, really?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and if I could jump in real quick, the DVRPC data for the greenhouse gas emission was a regional effort. So they have data on the greater Philadelphia area and their, you know, the sections of New Jersey that they cover. So we do have data from all the different counties that's readily available, as well as the individual municipalities in Montgomery County. And I believe they break that down by per capita emissions versus, I think, square land acreage emissions.
So let me be more blunt. Where does the county stand within, do you have an idea?
We do. And we do make a couple comparisons in the actual physical plan. We basically have the second highest emissions after Philadelphia.
And you're kind of foreshadowing something about this plan that I'm really excited about when it comes to measuring. So thank you very much. I didn't even have.
I hope you're excited about something. So
I-
far, everything you give me is really doomsday kind of stuff, so.
I mean, it's all gonna be, yeah, like I'm not.
We end with sunshines and
Like,
rainbows,
we're
don't
not
worry.
singing Kumbaya on this one. It's yeah, we're fighting doomsday here, and this is what.
We save all the rainbows and the beach days at the end. All right. Next slide.
Oh. There we go. There we go. Now we're
Yeah,
good.
so, you know, and we can kind of just skip over this one too. It's just basically saying that we have two kind of mile markers. We hope that this plan will produce a 40% reduction by 2030, which is the equivalent of about 3.8 million metric tons reduction. And then, you know, we do have a couple people on our steering committee who successfully petitioned to aim for a 100% reduction by 2050.
So the thinking behind that was, we have 18 communities in the county that have passed Ready for 100 resolutions, which have 100% transition to renewable and clean energy by 2050. The thought was, this is a very aspirational goal, but the county's goal should not be less than that of our most aggressive communities. And it is a goal. The ICLEI tool was able to take the DVRPC greenhouse gas inventory, and we were able to model these targets. The 40% reduction by 2030, if you crunch the numbers, seems to be actually plausible with a tremendous amount of work and investment. The 100% reduction by 2050, we are living in the assumption and hope that there will be technologies implemented and policies implemented beyond our control that would help achieve that goal. As status quo business, like there's no way we would be able to reach that. But once again, this is an aspirational goal. And the steering committee and the technical committee felt, you know, if we're going to put a goal, we might as well match our most aggressive communities.
How did your emissions for transportation already show a 5-year run of less? What happened?
So that will be based on federal policy for better miles per gallon, and then also transitioning from traditional fuels towards natural gas and then EVs. So that is a market where you are seeing a market-driven reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, which is very significant.
So electric cars in the future should also show how that diminishes.
Exactly. So that is, what you see here in the graph is the business as usual. And this is where we would need to go for a 40% reduction. All of these would have to shrink, whether, transportation would come down, we need to do commercial and industrial and residential. And then obviously to reach that would be, I would hope to get a promotion from Scott France if I can get all of our greenhouse gas emissions to reduction to 0 by 2050. So we have a vision. I don't want it to only be based on that. Not putting all my eggs in the 0 in the 100% reduction.
Make sure you note the minutes.
So we have a vision, we have a goal. How do we get here? And it's on to what we need to do. And we really, the technical and the writing team really debated on this. We have this plan, which has a wide scope. We are talking about every government, county government, municipal government, churches, hospitals, your house. How can we, this plan is supposed to be a guidance for all of them. So while I would love to give very specific strategies, like you will do this first, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, because of the broad scope of this plan, we realized that wouldn't be very feasible. Like it's too unwieldy. Our goal for this plan is we ended up with 18 strategies, broad strategies that we wanted to encompass all the work that is being done already, because there's a tremendous amount of work being done in the county around climate change issues. And we also wanted to cast a broad enough net that this plan will support organizations, municipalities doing the other type of work that they need to do that we may not even know about yet, that they may be like, this will help affect climate change. And we wanted it to be able to support those. So we have our strategies are broken down into some subject areas. For each strategy that will be in the plan, narratively, we have 4 components. Description of the strategy and why it's important. That's obvious. You're a plan. Why is it important to do this? The metrics that will be used to track and monitor progress. This gets to something, Steve, that you brought up. How can a community, whether it's the county, whether it's a municipality, what can they do to track this? You look at that greenhouse gas emissions inventory, you could spend millions of dollars as a community. And by the next time the inventory comes out, which the last one is 2015, and we're almost 10 years out, you're not going to see a huge reduction possibly because of the land use. It's all based on land use, and so you can invest a lot and not see a lot of results in a metric, in like a number. So we wanted to think about in this plan for each of our strategies, what can a community, what can the county measure? So we can say, oh, we want to do this. We want to add X amount to this metric. Or when we study it 3 years from now, be like, we definitely did nothing on this metric, and we need to start to think about how we can do more. So for each strategy, we've created metrics for studying. Right now, the draft plan has 58 metrics that we want to be able to measure and almost have a report card that the county can use, and that can be broken down by municipality. So a Springfield, so an Abington can look at it and be able to say, okay, we are doing this, and this is how we can track our progress on this plan. It's something that we haven't done before. It's something that we've thought about, and this is a great vehicle to do that. And as we go through the strategies, I'm briefly going to go through the 18 strategies. I give you an idea of the metrics that we're studying, and I would love to hear, be like, oh, I'm aware of this. Have you thought about studying this? So that's another point where I really want input from the board. Because the strategies are broad, we want to give example implementation of how a municipality, a resident, or a private institution could implement the strategy. it's not going to be a comprehensive list because that would be volumes and volumes, but it starts to give the reader an idea of what are some of the things that this would include. And then case studies. This is another spot where we're really looking for input from the public, because this group is very tied into your communities and to Montgomery County as a whole. And you may be able to provide us with excellent examples of, I know so-and-so is doing this and it's awesome, and you should cite it so it can inspire other members of the Montgomery County community to be like so-and-so.
One question, who's going to continue to measure, who's going to continue to monitor the implementation and the metrics?
So some of that will fall on us, and the things that we are looking to measure are things that are readily available, updated regularly, and are free.
Right, but I'm saying the grant that we got from DEP.
That will be done. This will be something that basically the environmental planning section will take on. And some of it a municipality will have to take on. There are certain metrics that, like, I wouldn't be able to get the exact information, like energy audits for municipal buildings. I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
But we'll make Brandon do it. We'll make John do it. Or they can, if they can take out of it as much as they want to put in.
And that's where the resiliency partnership kind of comes in. And that'll serve as like a reminder or a catalyst for keeping the municipalities on track. For anyone who's worked with me on anything, they know I'm tenacious and I don't surrender until I get an answer for something. So I plan to keep their feet to the fires when it comes to a lot of these metrics.
When you're not on the beach, though.
Even when I'm on the beach.
Wait, when he's on the beach, he's doing climate change metrics.
Makes my wife angry, but for the greater good.
Oops, sorry. I want to go through these. I'm going to go through them pretty quickly because we don't want to sit here and talk about them ad nauseum. But I'm hoping that as you see them, if you think of something, let me know now. When you go home and you think of something, email us and let us know, because it is draft. We have two what I call fundamental strategies. We have like the topic areas transportation. We have two fundamental ones. One is that we need to work together. We have to work collaboratively around the issue of climate change. We need to, this is not something, as we've talked about before, flooding doesn't care about imaginary political borders. Like, we need to be able to work municipalities together, public-private partnerships. We got to solve it together. We're in this together. We're going to solve it together. Some of the case studies that we're talking about, obviously the Resiliency Partnership and the Consortium of Communities are excellent examples of collaborative work. Dulcie, you want me to take a little bit of time? We can talk about the Wissahickon Clean Water Partnership in great detail. I remember the last time Drew spoke about it, we're like, because it's been going on for so long.
I didn't know if that was a cue for me to come on with something, but I wasn't quite sure what it was.
It was a throwback to a previous meeting where we talked about the.
Yes.
But it's an excellent example of multi-municipal collaboration around a stormwater issue, which is climate change.
Well, there's an incentive for them to be doing that.
And there's also.
That's what I was going to let you get through this to say, this is all great, but what about potential, current or potential incentives? Because there's nothing like a carrot besides being good, quote unquote. We know this is good on a lot of different levels. What are those carrots that we might be able to help with?
So.
You don't have to get there if it's in here.
Well, no, I mean, that's just we're talking about fundamental strategy. That's a fundamental issue. It is not a regulatory diet. It's not tied directly to any source of funding. But like I talk about with a lot of these plans, like if a municipality or the county adopts, endorses, uses this plan as they go for funding, hopefully it puts them in a stronger footing. We need to start to address the fact that like Moody's and Poor, municipal bond ratings are being tied to their climate change resiliency.
That's concrete.
That's huge. And that's something that having this plan, endorsing this plan will hopefully show those organizations that a municipality and that an organization is taking climate change seriously. like really right now, like that's kind of the big one in the back of my head is that everybody needs to go out for bond funding. And like, if it affects your rating, that's going to be something where municipalities are really going to start to take, and the county itself is going to take climate change seriously because.
But I think that kind of stuff needs to be very direct in promoting and messaging on this, because you know, there are lots of people who just want to do it because they understand the concepts and the world's a better place and my community's healthier and all stuff. But the bottom line often is something.
When you can have that triple bottom line of you're helping the environment, you're helping the economics, and you're helping the people, like that's how this message.
A lot of times it's avoided costs.
Exactly, which is tough to sell because.
Not unless you have them, there are case studies that show that.
Exactly, and I think that's one of the things that will
do it. You don't necessarily have to have it as your first, firsthand work that you've done under this program, but you can say this program showed that by planting more trees or doing the stormwater, the community saved X number of dollars. You don't have to do it, you just have to refer to it.
Exactly, and I agree that is a huge messaging point that we need to emphasize. So the other fundamental strategy, not only do we have to work together, everybody's got to do their own stuff. You know, one of the questions that came up was, how does this affect the county, which has Greenprint? We have our own climate action plan. We have 4 municipalities that have either adopted municipal sustainability plans. Cheltenham, Collegeville, Pottstown, Lower Marion is working. We've helped them with a greenhouse gas reduction plan, and that is now transforming into a sustainability plan for the work that they're doing. They have the only one in the county that I'm aware of a paid sustainability manager position as part of their township staff. Ambler Borough, who is a Ready for 100 community, has done an energy transition plan. And then we have the Ready for 100. We want to make sure that we're not saying that this plan stops anybody from doing their individual planning. Because the plan is so broad, this plan supports everybody looking at your own government, at your own business, at your own household. How do you figure out what works best for you? So fundamental, we got to work together and everybody's got to do their own stuff.
Is there a place to find out who the municipalities are in that RF 100?
Yes, there is a website. If you Bing Montgomery County Ready for 100, they have their own website and they keep an up-to-date list of the municipalities that have done it. So now we start to get into some of the subject area, and we're going to go through this pretty quickly. Transportation. We've heard this is one that is very key. We've talked about this. How can we reduce greenhouse gas emissions? Some of the metrics: tracking linear feet of sidewalks, paths, public transportation systems, and populations within a 10-minute walk of those systems. All the things that are concrete that we can measure and we can start to see, are people able to take advantage of it? Are we adding sidewalks? Are we adding paths? Something that you can go from year to year and say, I'm making progress. It may not be a greenhouse gas emission reduction number, but it's all the stuff that goes into getting that number. So we can track that, we can measure that, we can set goals on those metrics. We have, on the county's been doing a lot of work. DVRPC has their pedestrian portal tool, which is awesome if you haven't seen it already. Pottstown is famous for their walk bike ped. We want to be able to publicize the work that they're doing. Brandon, do you want to take a second and talk about your community trail plan?
I could, but I see that Ann is speaking a little later today. I'm not sure if that was by design or just coincidence. And I think she might be talking about it. But just in brief, Springfield Township, we're looking at walkability and, how we can facilitate non-motorized transportation within our borders. So this plan that we're working on with the assistance of the Planning Commission is looking to promote those walkable trails and, how we facilitate getting from one end of the township to another without having to get into your car.
Just from another metric perspective, and again, we're just getting a snapshot here, but just to throw it out there, it may already be part of the plan. DVRPC has their journey to work data. that would be a great metric. It tells you, some of the modal splits of trips and where people live versus where they work. And that does speak to, whether people live close to work or far from work, whether they take transit, personal vehicles. So there would be some, I think, valuable metric data in that data set, which again is available.
Awesome. If it's available and if it's getting updated, it's awesome, because the more granular we can have with the metrics, I think the more communities in the county can set goals and see success. Prepare for, support, and implement the infrastructure necessary for the decarbonization of vehicle fleets and responsibly decarbonize the fleets. This is a huge topic of conversation right now. So we want to be able to, some of the metrics, we're going to track EV charging and EV vehicle purchasing. We can get that through PennDOT. I highlighted track natural gas infrastructure, because that is an interesting conversation of natural gas vehicles are lower emission than traditional fuel vehicles, but it ain't that great. It's not as good as an EV. And being a practical environmentalist, I think it's something that we should track, because it may be a transition. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. But it is something that I'm interested, whether this board thinks that as a metric, it's something that we should, track.
That one is easily tracked. I think the EV one is a great example. The data, I think, on that would be more readily available. Is the data available to track the
We
natural
have
gas?
been able to track it in the past.
I mean, a lot of it is transit vehicles. I think in terms of the numbers, a lot of it ends up being the buses. So I would think that data would somehow be available.
Yes, as far as and we haven't tracked it in a while, but we have been able to get the snapshot of natural gas infrastructure. So.
And along the lines of what Nicole said, we did have that presentation from SEPTA, and it's not actually in the forefront of their minds to create a sustainable fleet of buses. That's not really part of their specific long range planning based on that conversation we had with them. So, even if that is a large portion, it's with the public transportation system in this immediate area, it's not really a priority right now.
If we have a climate action plan, then we can start to put some pressure on SEPTA. And then case studies, DBRPC has it ready to roll, which is their ownership potential data. They have a multitude of other tools. So this is something that if there are any communities that are implementing EV infrastructure and EV vehicles, we would like to know. And that way we can include that as an example in the plan.
Yeah, a lot of municipalities are putting it in their ordinance and requiring EV charging stations as part of land development proposals, in addition to the municipal infrastructure itself.
Yeah.
So I think that would be an area, again, of a case study, so that those municipalities that might not exactly know how to go down that road or learn from others, here, this ordinance works better than this ordinance, that might be an area to reflect on and share.
Yep, that's a good idea.
John, just out of curiosity, has there ever, I'm sure there has been, a study on the correlation between gas pricing and the adoption of EV vehicles? And the reason I say that is because I just came back from the West Coast, and LA Metro is astoundingly converting, because gas is close to $7 a gallon, to either hybrids and a lot of EVs. You walk down the street in a small community and you see the electric lines into cars through very middle-class communities. And of course, it's driven by the market. It's so expensive. People say, I'll make this investment for the long run. And I'm just curious if there have been such studies.
I cannot think of one off the top of my head, but my assumption is that there have been, and that it's a good thing to look at.
It's kind of like logical,
Yeah.
but I was pretty astounded in the change, even like 6 months You know, I travel to the West Coast a lot because our kids are there, and it's pretty remarkable because I've been watching that change since I went to a hybrid 20 years ago. And it's really remarkable.
You do, it does feel, and I have zero scientific evidence for that, that we are at like a tipping point, that it's, you know, that we're gonna start rolling downhill with EVs and that.
They're in Marlboro Township, which to me is like, yeah.
And it is an issue that the planning commission is working on. We are working with DVRPC on EV infrastructure planning. And this is something that we're trying to keep to be on top of, to be a resource to our communities. Encourage transportation oriented development. Our steering committee thought that this was very important. We can track the public transportation system and the ridership to show people's commuting habits, and that goes to the resource, the portal that you were talking about. We can make sure that we're keeping track of the TODs. I hear Lansdale. There was the word on the street is Lansdale's got a nice transit-oriented development area that we might highlight.
But the change in 20 years in Lansdale is what's remarkable, and the density around transit in these communities and the number of people living closer, that's what's amazing to me in all of these communities. The change in the number that live of people because of multi-family housing being built within a quarter mile or half a mile of transit. That in Montgomery County would be a remarkable number.
So I think what's interesting is right now in the metric, we're talking about, tracking the public system and the residents, but it probably makes sense to also track populations and buildings within that 10-minute walk.
I'm saying.
I think there are numbers in that report, actually. I don't have off the top of my head, but we did.
Yeah,
look
we
at that.
think, right.
Because I think it'll be eye-opening.
John, your structure is fine, but you want to kickstart this the right way. You have to put incentives out there, tax credits and things like that to encourage people to do what you want them to do. Sitting back, waiting for it to happen, it's going to take 40 years.
Yeah.
I think if you can kickstart it some way, encourage incentives, encourage tax savings, I think it will move your program a lot better.
I think it involves I think the plan needs to include how to incentivize these strategies. And there's a conversation where we talk about, the bond ratings, where we talk about the funding opportunities, the things of that nature that really make the reader think about, okay, this is how I can do it. And hopefully through these case studies, we'll be able to show, oh, this is how, Cheltenham did this project, and this is how they got it funded, and this is the impact that it had. So we'll be able to use that to be able to show people, what the value and the benefits are of these. Energy use and generation, support energy conservation practices. This is a big thing about tracking the energy consumption in buildings. We want to really highlight our CPACE program. There was recently, if you're not aware, CPACE is the county program that funds that projects can be funded through a tax assessment for energy conservation projects. I know, multifamily, indoor air quality, resiliency in House Bill 3635. So that is something that the county is working on to roll that out so that our constituents are aware. And hopefully, we've had a $9 million, well, I think it was a $9 million project. We have others in the pipeline. Hopefully these new project opportunities, especially multifamily, will really get these projects moving for energy efficiency. And then we have LEED, we have portfolio manager, ways of benchmarking and studying these buildings and their energy consumption.
John, I keep feeling that, we have to, maybe it's already happened, I'm just not aware of it, to make sustainability and these energy conscious decisions no longer just green people things. That this is something that the general public and people that are interested in, I just said it before, but in a different way, bottom line, this is practical, financially reasonable. This is not just what for decades was thought, hippie, progressive people thought about. This has nothing to do with politics. This has to do with good business and healthy lifestyles.
I agree.
I feel like we've made a lot of progress.
Right.
I had a conversation just a week or so ago that shocked me. We have a friend that's installing solar at their house. And my husband has a good friend that's a real estate agent. He was speaking with this real estate agent about installing solar at your residential home. And the realtor said, I wouldn't do it if I were you. He said, why? He said, more often than not, when I am dealing with my clients, if they are looking at a home with solar, they want it removed before they buy it.
Oh,
Where does that thought process come from? I was shocked that that was still this was not a one-off. This is a reaction that he's getting on a regular basis.
That's right.
I did not understand it.
I mean,
That's what we're fighting against.
Yes.
That's what
It's still very prevalent.
Did they say why?
bracket?
He didn't, and I want to have a conversation with him to understand if it is an older segment, that just, hasn't embraced that yet. I want to know more, but I was shocked that is a prevalent response that he is getting in the real estate market.
I was gonna try to be the ray of sunshine in this one. My wife works in corporate real estate and they do multifamily around the country. And, they have a sustainability and energy efficiency team. All the other players in that field have people like that. In her previous job, she had hired Will Williams to do energy work for her company. And then Will ended up being the sustainability manager at Westchester. Like on the commercial level, like where they understand, where they live in Excel sheets, this is making more and more different. I think we are still seeing I see that on my roof. That's just something that's going to cause me a problem later.
Well, it's like the school district, the Upper Brook School District, they removed, geothermal and solar from their middle school. They had a change in the school board and they said, it was like $150,000 difference or something. They said, we have to save the money. And I thought, I just was dumbfounded.
Wow.
I mean, with not the only thing, but the best thing we can do is continue to do our work, to do it well, to show great examples of how this works. I always hear stories from New Jersey where you see the solar panels on the light poles. That was a solar power purchase agreement for, I think, Edison Electric, but it's actually had a negative impact on solar in New Jersey because people are like, those are ugly.
Right.
And they're like, I don't like solar because I see all those and it's kind of had a detriment, and you've seen a municipal reaction to those. So you have to do it and you got to do it right.
I wonder if you've looked at what ULI have been doing. If you get their experience as part of what you're doing.
I had not thought of them as a stakeholder, but that's a great idea. Thank you. Support renewable energy production. We can track projects. We have, once again, pointing to Lansdale as a great example of implementing renewable energy. The county itself has gotten a DOE designation as a Soul Smart Silver County for the work that we've done around solar. We have 4 municipalities that have gotten bronze designations on their own. You see these 2 here to toot our own horn. The county is involved in 2 renewable energy projects. This one, we have hired a consultant to look at the Norristown Dam, to look at the feasibility of hydroelectric power installed on that dam. We are in the process of going through that. And that's very exciting because it does seem that it may be feasible, that the technology has improved where, this may be a viable project, and it would power the Justice Center, 1 Montgomery Plaza with extra this cell.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Well, the Justice Center, to go back to energy conservation, that building, when it's expanded, will use half the energy of what the current building does. because of the energy efficiency.
See, those are the stories that something like this almost has to highlight. I don't know how you do it, but this is a school that chose to be energy efficient. I remember when we went and visited Haverford School years ago for Montgomery Award, they told us the difference when they became energy efficient. Some of the private schools did it, and it was really remarkable. But those stories in different component sectors really, even if we don't have it in your report, there's a link, success stories, so that when people go online and look at this, they can go right to that success story in the quadrant that they're interested in.
Exactly. Like this is, in a lot of ways, the things that we do around sustainability and climate change it's branding.
It's marketing.
It's marketing.
Totally marketing.
Exactly. Like I'm out here making a hard sell to people to try to get them to do the right thing. But yeah, no, and then we're also working with DVRPC on a multi-regional, like a multi-jurisdictional. The counties are working on collaborative energy purchasing, and then with the end goal of doing a large-scale solar farm that would power our production, similar to what Philadelphia and SEPTA have done. So that is moving forward, and that's something that we'll talk about in the future as that progresses, because that's really exciting. And it changes everything about how we're going to purchase energy. And we also have the ability to include municipalities into that work. So reduce the production of waste. And we can track tonnage, we can track our household hazardous waste. For some case studies, we can talk about the plastic bag ordinances that are happening. We can talk about some of the municipalities that are, or the organizations that are reducing waste production. We want to reuse and recycle as large a portion of the waste stream as possible. We can track our recycling tonnage. It'd be interesting to find ways to meet and to work with those businesses and organizations that are reusing materials, retriever, things of that nature. So we can publicize the success of those types of programs. We don't currently have those relationships, but I'll go do my salesman, do a hard sell and talk to them and see if we can start to get some of those numbers. Brandon, do you want to chime in? You added the North Montgomery County Recycling Commission.
Yeah, and I'm heavily involved in the recycling process here in Springfield because we do all our own collections. And the biggest part of it is education. Recycling is only as good as what the messaging you put out to your community is, what you can and can't recycle. And you'd be surprised what people are aware or not aware of that they can recycle. So I included the example of the Northern Montgomery Recycling Commission because that is one of the more streamlined efforts in the county to put out educational materials and really educate their public about the recycling process, and ultimately would lead to higher recycling tonnages.
And we also want to make sure that we don't forget Veronica, the Montgomery County Recycling Coordinator, who does amazing work. If she's listening on the internet. And we want to support composting. We can track municipal composting tonnage. Once again, start to create those relationships with private composting. And then, we do have municipalities that do yard composting. We can use them as case studies of their opportunities. And then Media Borough, though not in the county, they run their own municipal composting opportunity. So that is something that we can reference.
Doesn't Lower Merion too? They used to do.
They, as far as I know, they do not. They do not. They don't do like you see here where you have your bucket.
But they have the leaf. They only have
they do yard.
Yard. I'm sorry. Right. That's right.
So, but that's been a conversation in Lower Merion about composting. How do we do it, and the value of private versus public composting operations. So that's something we'll have to delve into a little bit more. Natural systems work collaboratively to address flooding, water quality, and other stormwater related issues through green stormwater infrastructure. These are, we've talked about this repeatedly. I think it would be good to talk about the impervious surfaces, track the stormwater management projects. The Wissahickon and Clean Water Partnership is working on a acres treated metric. It would be cool if we could have a uniform metric for acres treated, where we can start to compare apples versus apples across the county. It's not something we have, but it's on my wish list. Obviously, the partnership would be a great case study. And the TTF Watershed Partnership does great work partnering with municipalities and school districts. They have a number of projects that they've done. So I think we would want to tout them. Tree canopy. This is something obviously where we have some metrics that we can track. One of the coolest case studies that I wasn't aware of until recently was Abington has an interactive urban forestry map. If you go onto their website, it is awesome. Like they've done an inventory. They have slide maps where you can see the aerial versus the heat island. It's awesome. So, to be able to tout something like that along with some of the other examples, I think would really be inspirational. We want to protect and preserve open spaces and pursue opportunities to create more. We can tout the return on environment study that was just done, and some of the other open space projects that have happened throughout the county. We want to protect agricultural lands and promote agricultural practices that lessen climate change impacts. I think that's not only do we want to keep our agricultural lands, but we want to make sure that those lands, we're trying to implement best management practices from those. And Drew told me about the Penn State Extension has a new project out where they are piloting new feed for livestock that reduces their flatulence.
Wow.
Which is a huge greenhouse gas emission. And I'm like, all right, I get to talk about this at work. My kids would love it. But things like that, like riparian buffers on farmlands, like fertilizer choices, things of those natures, we want to promote those.
That was in my head.
You have a website on animals.
Kind of hard to follow that, John.
I didn't. Trust me,
We should have ended on
with
that.
burgers in my house. I told my kids that once. Every time I have burger, then all of a sudden it starts being potty talk at the dinner table. I get in trouble. We want to make sure that we address the health impacts of climate change. And so we want to inventory. We could talk about our code red and air quality alerts. We already have the climate change potential vulnerability analysis, which talks about heat and vulnerable populations. What I didn't know about until I was recently talking to Brandon. Brandon, do you want to talk about your air quality monitoring?
Yeah, sure. Our EAC here in Springfield Township actually invested in the purchase of an air quality monitor that we placed at the Springfield Library. And the cool thing is that it's a live reading with an interactive map through Purple Air. Not to endorse Purple Air. There's lots of different companies that also have this. But there is a cool little tool where it takes air samples every 10 minutes. So residents in Springfield can pull up the Purple Air map and see in real time what the air quality is at the library. It's posted on the exterior of the library building. And it's kind of interesting to kind of see the trends over over a week in 10-minute intervals to see where the air quality spikes and where the air quality, kind of has its troughs. Most notably, rush hour, morning and evening. But, there are a lot of other communities in Montgomery County and even private entities that are, purchasing interactive air quality monitors just as an info point for their residents.
So once again, it's a way of marketing. It's a way of raising awareness about these issues. And air is not something that you see. It's not, it's not sexy. It doesn't really draw your attention, but it is of huge influence. We want to ensure equity is addressed in our response to climate change. So once again, DVRPC, we use our indicators of potential disadvantage layer. And we link that and we use that in our potential climate change vulnerability analysis. So that's something that we can measure, and we can start to see the populations that we have in the county that are potentially disadvantaged.
Are they done by census tracts?
Yes. We tried to, for the climate change potential vulnerability analysis, we tried to make it smaller, but it was very difficult to do. So that's something that we're working on, and we hope to be able to refine. Impactful policies, we want to pursue ordinances and regulations that mitigate the effects and adapt to climate change. This is something that the Planning Commission has been working on, for a very long time, since our beginning of promoting good ordinance work. So, we can continue to develop the guidance and regulations, and then we can start to track the adoption of those ordinances. So we can have case studies and examples to show other municipalities the work that we're doing. We have our model ordinances, concluding the renewable energy framework, which is, I'm going to steal Drew's thunder a little bit, which we are working with DVRPC to update the solar renewable energy framework. We are creating a utility scale solar guidance for the region, and we are looking to create guidance language for energy conservation and greenhouse gas emission reduction. So we are partnering with DVRPC on this wide swath of projects to try to give our municipalities excellent guidance. In fact, I got an email from Evan Stone, who's the director of Bucks County, asking for our help with some of their municipalities looking to do large scale utility ordinances. So, we're helping where the counties are meeting, the sustainability people of all the counties in the region are meeting regularly. And we're really starting to develop a relationship where we're helping and sharing and working together. So it's just kind of a cool collaborative way of trying to tackle some of these issues.
How many more you have here, John?
Last one. I know, I'm almost,
I just want to make sure. For less time to.
I'm a professional. I'm a professional.
I know you're.
And then we're going to support climate change efforts on the state and federal level. A lot of the things that we need to do are not within the control of the municipalities, the county, the residents, the businesses. A lot of this has to come from the top down. So, we're going to track local investments, and we're going to, this is interesting. I did a FEMA webinar, which, to toot my own horn, which I like to do, was the most highly attended FEMA webinar ever. Yeah, I know.
Wow.
And after that webinar, somebody from Georgia, their state hazard mitigation office, contacted me. We talked. He's involved with the federal process for this possible federal storm act. And he asked if I knew municipal representatives that would be willing to, he says, testify, in front of the working group, which is just basically talk to them. It's not when there's not going to be anybody under oath or anything like that, but to get Montgomery County insight on federal funding, what works, what doesn't work. So this kind of working collaboratively and trying to be a part of, these bigger efforts is ongoing, and we're a part of it, which is pretty cool.
And you gave the FEMA webinar?
I did. Well, I was part of it. I was the headliner. I was the main stage. There were a couple others that joined, that kind of chimed in,
He's good at marketing.
That's going to factor into the promotion thing.
I mean, well, now I'm tied into saving the planet. I don't get a promotion unless we reduce greenhouse gas emissions to zero. So
Now you're stuck.
now I'm stuck. So last slide, right at time. I'm going to hand this one off to Brandon.
Yeah, so, we kind of wanted to give the group a broad overview of where we've been, what we've accomplished so far, and now it's kind of where we're going to go with this. So it is our hope to kind of meet with the steering committee once again, basically detail a little bit more on the strategies and get their input like we're getting your input today, and hopefully start the public outreach process so we can hear from members of the community that haven't been directly involved to date, go on tour, so to speak, either later this summer or most likely this fall, and to kind of end everything with the rainbows, sunshine, and steer away from the doom and gloom. I think the underlying message that we hope to accomplish with this plan is, yes, climate change is a lot of doom and gloom. It can be kind of depressing when you think about it. But at the end of the day, it provides a great opportunity, not only for individuals and businesses to, save money on their energy bills and, have some cost avoidance, but also for us at the municipal level to really make our communities longer lasting and more prosperous into the future. And with that, I think we'll take any kind of questions that the commission has, or, if the.
I'm gonna open it up to the board
Yeah.
first. I'll start with Jonathan and Bob. See, Karina, if we want to, Bob join the meeting. Jonathan and Bob, you guys got anything you wanted to discuss? Jonathan, why don't you go first?
No, I don't. That was really interesting and pretty deep. So thank you very much.
Okay, Bob?
Yes, Stephen, I think Charlie was right on point. I think it's necessary to give it an incentive to municipalities, individuals, and groups for trying to, push this project ahead and give it the attention that it needs. I don't know whether it's public meetings, mailers, or what it may be, but I think that is an important component of getting this started and getting the legs it needs to become a real project.
Thanks, Bob. Anybody, any board members in the room? Charlie, anything?
None.
Nicole?
Nothing additional.
A question, do you think you need any type of definitional lexicon in the report so that people who are not really new to this topic?
I think in what we have and what we'll continue to do, I think, is like call out boxes for that terminology. So it's not a glossary, but it's,
Something
as you're
that
reading
helps
through,
you.
like, oh, what does that mean? Okay.
Okay, good. Because I think sometimes when I delve into something very new, I go, oh, what? No, okay. But it really helps if you have that.
Thank you.
So first of all, this is really ambitious, and I applaud both of you guys for putting this together. In full disclosure, Brandon and I sit together on the executive committee of consortium of communities. So I've kind of seen this. I've been privy to some of it. And as a municipal manager, this is a real challenge. We spend, and Brandon knows this, we spend the bulk of our day putting out fires. And this, as important as it is so far down the list.
Because it's critical but not urgent.
I've got money that I've got to put out sinkholes in roads. And this is wonderful. This is great stuff. But at the end of the day, where does it fit in my pie chart of priorities? So one of the things that I think is going to be extremely important is my elected officials are the ones that drive the boat on what gets done and what does not get done, regardless of whether I promote it or I don't promote it. The people that are going to have an impact on the elected officials are going to be the public, who comes out and expresses their concern about our municipality getting involved in this and making their voices heard that this is important, because that's when the elected officials listen. We have had, and I'm sure other municipalities are like this, we have had complete ordinances written about one person coming out and complaining about a specific item, not a group of people, one. We've had policy change. So people who are elected officials hear that. And I think that particular piece of the puzzle of getting the public out to hear this and express their concerns because it's important is going to be extremely important to get this thing moving forward. So great stuff. I'm all on board with it. I think there's a lot of legwork to get this thing moving.
So that's one of the reasons why, as an organization with the partnership, we wanted to broaden the scope, not just municipal governments. This is something that any organization, any individual can look to and be like, oh, the county has these goals, that has a climate action plan. Like, what are you, elected official, or you boss, or you mom doing that we can support
And I
this?
think when the elected officials start to see other entities on board, like the school districts and the churches and the large businesses starting to get behind this, that's when they start to listen also, because they're all constituents. So, yeah, nice job, guys.
So I have a couple comments, but before we do that, I just want to open it up to anybody, any member of the public in the room, any member of the public online that would like to speak about or give us a comment. If you are a member of the public, please unmute yourself and give us your name and municipality you preside in. Go ahead, Karina.
I have a chat comment
Okay,
from Alexandra Klinger. The comment is regarding the planned vision slide. Preserving our environment through adaptation and resiliency planning. The vision statement is vague and hard to understand what it really means. What does it mean? And it should be more specific.
any other comments from the public?
No hands raised.
Okay. So I have three comments, or three things to consider in the matrix. One was, and I think Charlie and I think John kind of just alluded to it and Bob talked about it, which was, I think it would be incumbent upon the group to work on developing formulas for local incentives, whether it be through taxation incentives, land use opportunities, to push along some of the things that you're talking about in this plan. I know talked about it with EV charging stations as being part of ordinances now. We have a lot of ordinances in the county that discuss incentives for green roofs and so on and so forth. I think we should make those more substantial. The idea is one, and the incentives too. So that's one thing I think should be also something, you alluded to it in one of your metrics, but I think it's something whatever, we can move along. The other thing is the county and municipalities, mainly the county, because I think it has the largest apparatus to do so, is to attract companies that companies that will develop more efficient and newer technologies and apparatuses to improve some of the efficiency ideas that we're talking about in the climate in this. We've had some success in manufacturing and in the county and attracting certain types of companies. I think this is something that the county should slowly move towards opening up and trying to bring companies in that will, for instance, make solar panels less unappealing on a house and make them somehow more efficient, so that they're smaller and they produce more energy from a smaller footprint. What do you do with, how do you make windmills more residential as opposed to a large pole with a big wing on it? So that's, and the last one, and that I didn't see really discussed, was population redistribution from climate change. Because we're seeing more and more effects, and you alluded to this, which is more frequent rain events and more intense rain events, and how they're slowly starting to remap where it is viable to develop and have the existing population, let alone population that may move from areas in and around Montgomery County that are being affected by floodplain issues and migrating to areas that may be within the county and other parts of the Philadelphia DVRPC area. But how population redistribution is going to affect Montgomery County.
Yeah, no, those are all very good points. The population redistribution one is, I'm sitting here trying to, you can probably see the gears turning in my head. How to tackle that. The climate change companies, it is interesting because I am partnering with Rebecca Swanson on the CPACE program. And one of the things that we are doing is we are doing a tremendous amount of outreach to Greenbuild United, to the Sustainable Business Network, to those types of businesses that are involved in the energy efficiency, either the production or the development, because we're trying to promote the CPACE program. So we're starting to, it's in its very beginning, but we're starting to really try to develop that relationship that hopefully will sprout.
John, I know recognition and awards programs are very, very labor intensive. I did them my whole professional career, but I think they're also effective, often getting out a message about things that are done correctly. I mean, we have our Montgomery Awards where we do land development and that. Maybe since the county really wants to be a leader in this, we do some kind of green award program. And we look at the different sectors and different components of being sustainable and energy efficient. And people might be able to nominate, but we might be able to, in the beginning, not self-nominate, but define those programs, do a write-up, do some kind of program, get it out there, and people can put that award in their marketing materials,
I think that sounds perfect for Patty.
I know she's gonna.
With all due respect,
Following up with what,
it's a nice thing.
why not go to our schools? This is a 20-year program. If we can get something in our high schools
Curriculums.
to start this, they'll be intelligent enough, maybe 5 years from now, and start demanding things.
Yeah.
I guess my perspective is I'm less interested in touting incremental or small incremental changes or how people are, but creating a network or a climate within the county, part of the time, but a climate within the county that this is a place where we want to see innovation to occur that can be used among multiple platforms and throughout the population for different reasons. Have like a technology or innovation center for those type of things that are going to have to be developed in order for people to make these changes on a mass scale. Otherwise, what we're stuck in doing now is it's only the projects, it's only the property owners, it's only the businesses that have the ability to get incentive money to put solar panels up all throughout their roof, or go to green energy somehow, or put in, water reclaiming systems, but there's got to be a way to start looking at how to do that on a smaller scale so that it can be implemented in somebody's home or somebody's small business or whatever. Until we get to that point, you're not going to see that. You're not going to see that jump point.
You have your consortium meetings, right?
We do.
I presume it's just obvious you do something like this, I don't know, you meet twice a year? What do you mean? Monthly. So 2 times a year, could we help incentivize something that brings new technology in with a little bit more, this is how you do it? Would that be helpful, Stephen?
Or behavioral change.
Right.
I mean, I don't know how,
Might be an interesting conversation to bring David Zellers into.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't think this is something we're going to solve now. I think it's an opportunity. I think it's an opportunity for any area in the country that has, has the ability to focus a workforce and has the ability to, have the brain power because of just the locale. I mean, you have schools all over the place. You got just a way to innovate and bring it to the county and incentivize.
That's a big concept.
Huh?
It's a big concept.
I'm all about big concepts.
Yeah, no, but I'm not making fun of you, Stephen. I said that, how do you do it?
I got it. But that's one thing that I think has to be done, whether it's done in Montgomery County or it's done in the middle of the state of Pennsylvania. I could care less as long as it gets done, because I think that's the problem right now is, I sit at my house. I mean, sure, I could put some solar panels on, but in the end, it's going to make a very small change until I can make those solar panels much more efficient, where they capture much more energy. And, I'm basically a net zero instead of just a small incremental reverse of my electric meter. So just a small idea.
I'll get working on it. We'll put that on the things to do before I get a promotion.
Great conversation. I look forward to, I think the board, based on the reaction, looks forward to seeing the continuation of this plan being developed. And,
Thank you.
you know, we're available. I think the conversation is dynamic, so.
Yeah, it's been a very valuable conversation. I appreciate your time.
Great stuff.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brandon.
So,
Thank you, Brandon.
now we'll talk about something a little less exciting, which is Springfield Township.
Maybe Ann's gonna make it.
Hey.
He didn't hang up
Springfield was
yet.
excited.
Still here.
Staying on.
So now we have a Springfield Township Planning Assistance, and welcome Ann Nygard. Is that how you say it?
That is how you say it, yes.
Good morning, Ann. First time.
Yes, I am excited to present on
I will
the.
try to stay
renewal.
quiet. I'll leave all the questions to Dulcie.
I'm generally very friendly.
Mark that dead.
Good morning.
Good morning. So Springfield, as of January of this year, has renewed its community planning assistance contract for 2022 to 2024. So most of you probably know a bit about Springfield. If Brandon's remaining on the line, he knows a lot about Springfield, obviously. It has a Board of Commissioner manager style government, 7 members on the Board of Commissioners. Planning Commission is 9 members, chaired by Amanda Helwig. The township staff, as relevant, are Michael Taylor is the township manager. The planning director is Mark Pennicale, who was previously with Abington Township. The assistant township manager is Brandon, who we all know at this point. And the township engineer is interim Timothy Woodrow, that is still being settled. You can see from the land use map, it is heavily residential with large pockets of institutional and retail mixed use along some corridors in the township.
And it's the only panhandle I think we have.
To my knowledge, yes, it has quite a
Very interesting
panhandle,
panhandle.
almost to the river there. So median age is a little bit higher than Montgomery County. Average household size, a little bit smaller, but not significantly so. Households with children, it actually perfectly matches the county average. And fewer households with seniors present. Median household income is a little bit higher than the county. And it has slightly fewer renters than the county. As you can see from the age comparison from 2010 to 2020, we see that on average, the age groups that have increased are the 60 to 69 bucket and the 5 to 9 bucket. So
Buying a lot of houses these days.
we've got we have a bit of a bifurcation going on in ages in the township. Comparing from 2010 and 2000, the population has grown by about 7%. However, when we compare that to the DVRPC population forecasts from 2015, Springfield has already outpaced the 2045 forecast as of 2020. So it's growing much faster than anyone actually expected. The median household income has increased numerically, but when you adjust for the cumulative inflation, it has decreased in purchasing power since 2000 and 2010. The median monthly housing costs, however, have definitely not increased in line with inflation. So as much as we're seeing housing costs balloon everywhere in the county, they aren't ballooning as much in Springfield. It has also added about 4% housing units since 2000, and it has become more highly educated since 2000 as well. You can see that both the percentage of the population that has a high school education or higher has increased by 9 percentage points, as has the percentage of the population with a graduate or professional degree. So that's sort of Springfield in a nutshell. The work that was done under the previous contract included revisions to an off-street parking ordinance due to the fact that the current standards were considered overly restrictive and inflexible in land developments. So there was a desire to update the standards to meet the ADA requirements as are current rather than previous, to add flexibility to those requirements, and to better match the parking requirements with the parking need in the township. We also continued the saldo update and provided, as we do with all of our community planning assistance contracts, land development and ordinance reviews and general flexible assistance. The largest land development and ordinance review was that a historic resources overlay district was reviewed by us and then adopted and added to the code in December 2019.
A question on the off-street parking. What was the major change or considered changes in there?
I believe I was not working on this contract at the time, so I'm not entirely familiar with every change, but I know that there was a strong desire to lessen the parking requirements and focus it on usable floor area rather than all floor area. So for example, back room of a store would not count as far as parking requirements.
Got it.
So then, work that is going on under this contract, we are continuing the saldo update. The current saldo that's in place in Springfield dates to 1950. And as you can see on this map on the right here, a significant portion of the township has been developed since 1950. All the blue parcels are those where we can see that the structure was built following 1950. So the saldo was written for a township that was putting in new neighborhoods. Now we're transitioning that into refining existing neighborhoods. And as part of that, we're doing significant rework of the design standards that Springfield has and bringing it more in line with the model ordinance that MCPC has. You can see here the progress that's being made. We have 4 out of the 10 articles in our model ordinance completed. One of them is in an interim state pending completion of the design standards rework. And several of the articles are with the township engineer at this time. And now, the fun project that Brandon was alluding to, the trail feasibility study. This is a project that kicked off earlier this summer. We are looking at developing, we are looking at the needs for the township as far as where trails already are in the township, where sidewalks are, where people have access to pedestrian infrastructure, and where they don't, where they want to go but cannot on foot without walking on the street. So you see here on the right, the 10-minute walk access to parks, trails, and open space in Springfield and a half-mile buffer around Springfield. You can see that the northern portion of the township qualifies as high need according to the population density and lack of trailheads in the area. This work is ongoing. We expect it to be completed in early 2023, so a fairly quick turnaround for a project. We are working with the open space section to make sure that we do the best work that we can and get it to Springfield in time for them to start making use of it and moving forward. Following that, the contract will address either a zoning update or a new comprehensive plan, depending on direction from the Township Board of Commissioners. The comprehensive plan update was adopted in 2014 after being started in 2012 and the zoning was last updated in 2016. So we believe at this time that they're more interested in a comprehensive plan update, but as always, it depends on what the feeling is when we get to that point in time. So the contract terms have an increase in planner days in 2022 to address the fact that we have two major projects occurring concurrently with the township. Otherwise, 2 planner days, much as the previous contract had. Total cost is what it is, and the municipal share totals about 40,000. Any questions?
Questions from board members in the room? Charlie? Nicole?
No questions, great presentation, thank you.
Thank you.
Chelsea?
Just a question, when I looked at where the needs, I was surprised where the needs for your trails were. It seemed to me that the more, maybe the overlay of density is not clear in my brain, but that the more dense part of Springfield is where you need more trails and connections, and the more suburbanized area of Springfield is where there already is connection. Am I correct on that?
So I assume you're referring to the portion south of 309 as the
Yes.
more suburbanized version?
Yeah, maybe it's not that way, maybe.
The density,
Does it correlate? Okay, does the density correlate to the need of more connection, which would be counterintuitive?
I believe it does. This is also based on a DCNR methodology.
Okay.
So this is my recollection of the methodology that was used.
Maybe it's just that the more developed area is a little bit older infrastructure that didn't put as much pedestrian infrastructure in at that time.
Because you would think it would
and-
be, naturally, you
Right.
think it'd be more
I-
walkable and they would.
Flat gate.
I will also note that there are 2 major parks with walking trails just outside the township boundaries in the more southern area. The Wissahickon Park and the Green Ribbon Trail.
Okay.
So
That skews it a little bit.
it does.
John?
No, nice job, Ed. Thank you.
Jonathan? Bob online?
Nothing here.
Bob, anything? I'm still like, you know,
Muted.
you're still muted, Bob.
Stephen, nothing, thank you.
Okay,
Great.
so I had a question.
Okay.
I actually, my business is in Springfield Township, right on Queen Street between Ivy Hill and Mermaid. Does the township have does the township have like a bike plan or the bike master plan?
I don't
The
believe,
connections to some of the parks that you talked about and also some of the surrounding municipalities. That's
I
some-
don't believe that Springfield has a bike plan. We are looking at bike access as part of the trail study.
Right, okay, so something within the trail study.
Not a specific focus on it, but we know that streets that are stressful for bicyclists are also streets that are stressful for pedestrians.
And do you, and I go by it, I'm not sure if it's completed or not, they got a grant for the park that's on Mermaid Lane.
For Dredgen Veterans Park, correct?
Yeah, it's right next to the agricultural building.
Work for that is ongoing. I don't know a date that they expect it to be completed.
We have a Brandon Ford has a he has his hand raised.
Okay.
Oh, Brandon.
Brandon would know the date on that dredging a lot more than I would.
Yeah, good thing I stayed on.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I know, right? Because you don't hear enough from me. Mermaid Park got a Montco 2040 grant due to the, thank you to the commission for that. The dredging is already complete. And we just awarded the contracts for the stream bank stabilization and the construction of a perimeter trail within that park on Mermaid Lane. Anticipated start date is next week or the week after. And then we fully anticipate the project being fully complete either by the end of August or, early to mid-September.
How big of a grant did you get, Brandon?
We were awarded $197,000 for that project from the Planning Commission.
And-
We also utilized some PICO open, green region funding, some funding from a couple of different other sources.
And what year did you receive that? This year, last year?
I believe it was 2020.
Yeah, it was 2 years ago.
Yeah, COVID kind of threw a wrench in our timeline for that project.
Well, it's good to see you're making progress.
Great. Any other comments from people in the room? Anybody online that would like to make a comment about Springfield Township presentation?
I'll just note that it is one of our longest running contracts. We've probably had them over 30 years as a contract. And if you notice on the terms too, we do 24 meetings a year for them. They're one of the only communities that we do 2 meetings a month. Their planning commission meets twice. So it is a pretty big contract from that.
Why does the
perspective.
planning commission meet twice?
You have to ask the township, but they have a lot of work between the ongoing land developments and the work that they do on parking or saldo or comprehensive plan. They like to keep it moving.
So I'm thinking about, you said that the population growth was about 7%, is that what I had? 7% from,
7% since 2010, 6.5% since 2000.
and is there specifically, trying to think what kind of development?
Yeah, I was
they had.
looking at the because there weren't that many housing units.
Yeah,
I was curious if there was multifamily in there or not.
The largest development that I am aware of
Oh,
is
I know where it
the Atria Senior Living Facility on Ridge Pike.
right, there's also the houses that they're building off of. I think they're both it's partially in Springfield and partially in Cheltenham.
Mhm.
Uh,
That would not be reflected in the 2020 numbers, but is good to be aware of moving forward.
No, it's been ongoing. I don't know
Oh.
if they're occupying yet, but I don't know what percentage is in Springfield and what percentage is in Cheltenham. I can't remember.
Lava Rock,
Yeah.
What is it?
Lava Rock Hill. I think it's called Lava Rock or
Yeah, it was, yeah. Right off of,
Willow Grove Ave.
yeah, there you go. Okay. Right up the street. I can't remember the name. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have the 2022 work program mid-year update.
That was something exciting.
We'll try to keep it lively. We certainly have bodies here. In fact,
Bodies? I hope we have people. Start with a doom and gloom already.
I have a demography background too.
Leave Jon Lesher out of here.
Yeah, for those who are speaking, feel free to move up. We'll get some more chairs, make it easier. We're gonna definitely keep a variety of voices with our bodies.
Just already going down.
I'm not sure if you would not be there.
And I need the controller. So, give the PowerPoint.
All right.
Got that clicker, right?
Should be still up there.
All right, Scott.
Okay, so we are in July, believe it or not, we last saw the work program, which was approved in January. Not so long ago, but half a year's gone by. And as you know, we did a bit of an overhaul with it this year or for this year. Really focusing on, creating focused topics. So this work program is more issue oriented than previous versions, really emphasizing the cross-section application and the where minds were being put forward. And so it's reorganized in a number of ways that I'm sure most of you remember. So I'm not going to go into great detail, but that work program, of course, is always available on our website, and we made it publicly posted. So we had the 7 focus topics. That's what we're going to be mostly talking about today, the projects within there. And then also some of the signature initiatives, which were larger scale programs and projects that we have in our scope. Core functions we're not really going to talk about today as a progress update because they're always ongoing and always often have to continue. So that's less of a progress type situation. Then Eric's going to touch on just a general sense of what's happening in our community planning program with those contracts. So the purpose of today's overview is not really, and I don't think it was intended. We heard from the board in January how it would be good to know how the work program was progressing through the year. Maybe not just get to the end of the year and look back, which might have been prior years' approaches. And I agreed. I wanted to use this as an opportunity. And I don't think it was, I didn't take it this way, and I don't look at it this way as like an audit necessarily, but rather just, where are interesting issues coming up? What are the challenges? Are we finding certain areas of our projects not being able to progress? Is there common issues? Is it staffing? Is there a municipal response? So just having that in the forefront of our knowledge, but then also seeing what has happened and where those impacts have been made. And so we'll acknowledge the challenges. We'll give you a quick note on those projects that may have been delayed or postponed or are slow to get off the ground. We want you to definitely be aware of those. But I think the other value of this is just to continually have these projects in front of you. We get to talk about some in great detail, like this morning with John's presentation, but others you don't hear about until we get to the end or find a point where it's good to bring it in front of you. This keeps it alive. It allows you to say, hey, I know the Planning Commission is working on this. Maybe it comes into one of your areas of responsibility or one of your professional projects, and allows you to be able to ask questions and learn more at any time, or give us some insight, or give us a nudge that you'd like to see more on the topic that we haven't talked about in a while. So I think that's a really key aspect of this too, and why I wanted to take some time up with our one of our agenda items to keep everything in front of you. Getting to the details of how we're going to present these things today. The general status is very simplified. We're noting if a project is complete, if it's on track, and that's a generalized statement. We feel comfortable about where it's going, where it is in the time frame, which is also an important issue I'll mention in a second. And then those that are delayed or on hold. And when we first started out, we drew a distinction. In the charts you'll see we've grouped them together. But the distinction between that is, a delayed, I think, is a more internal focus, where maybe it's a staffing issue, maybe it's other things have come up where a project just has taken longer to get to where it was expected. On hold might be a more external factor. Maybe the municipality wasn't ready to begin if they're a partner in the project, or funding hasn't come through yet, or any other type of impact that might have resulted in that. And then again, finally, a reminder on the timeframes, which are included in our charts as well. This work program was very specific towards wanting to look beyond just the year ahead. While it's definitely geared toward 2022, we note projects that are medium or long-term. Medium terms are expected to take longer than just this calendar year, go into 2023, and long-term could go 3 years or even longer. So that's important to keep in mind when we looked at it internally too, just to see, how far has a project progressed percentage-wise. Well, that's relative to what the full scope or time frame of the project is. But we won't get into too much detail with that at this level. So that's the setup. We're not going to talk about every single project. If you got a chance to see the PowerPoint I sent out yesterday, they're all listed there. They're all in the guide. We're not going to drag through it, but we are going to highlight some of the more interesting ones, some things that have happened over the first 6 months, and then give you a quick understanding of where those challenges are and what's been completed. So with better built environment, I'm going to begin. I mentioned to a few of you here, this would normally be a topic where Patty Gutton Plan of our design section would be happily speaking about some of her projects that she's involved with. She's been on a 3-day ordeal trying to get back to the continent, which I think she's listening in finally, but I'm not pulling her in because God knows how much sleep she's actually had. But we're going to talk, I'm going to kick it off with Better Built Environment. This is where we look at the built environment, where the public spaces are, what's being developed, and how we can influence that with greater attractiveness, accessibility, and different components, especially in our downtowns, town centers, but even in our residential developments as well. So we're going to begin. I'm going to ask Claire to talk about Fort Washington.
Hi, good morning. I'm Claire Warner. I'm the community planner for Upper Dublin Township, presenting on behalf of Patty and the design team. So we presented a couple months ago to the board on the Fort Washington streetscaping and landscaping plan, and gave a little bit of background about our coordination with Bull Smith, the township traffic engineer, and our collaboration with them on the Cross County Trail landscaping plan. So update on that is that we are currently working on the landscaping plan for the section of the trail that's closest to me between along Commerce Drive between Pennsylvania Avenue and the 309 overpass. A couple weeks ago, we sent them CAD files with the for the landscaping plan to Bull Smythe, and we're currently waiting feedback from them before moving on with any revisions that are necessary, and then later moving on to other sections of the trail.
And I forgot to mention, if you have any questions, or feel free to interrupt. This is open. Obviously, we can get into discussions about any of these projects for some length, but certainly you want to know more, just speak up. Model Saldo update. I think we have Marley online.
Hi, everyone. A quick update on the Model Saldo. This is a multidisciplinary effort to update our model subdivision and land development ordinance. We currently have a Model Saldo as part of our toolkit of model ordinances, but it's about 10 years old or more. And we have a lot of new best practices and standards to incorporate. Complete streets, sustainable green parking lots. There's opportunities to incorporate all of that into a new model. We've split into working groups, and the one that is the furthest along, understandably, is the landscape design kind of working group. We're going to be also incorporating a landscape best practices manual. So there'll be ordinance language and kind of an illustrated compendium of landscape best practices. Again, a lot of new information to incorporate through our work and national best practices, focusing on native species, minimum soil volume for street trees, that sort of thing. In the meantime, we have been advancing and learning from all of the individual municipal saldos we've worked on. Just this year, East Greenville and Lower Merion have adopted brand new saldos, and Jenkintown has also completed a draft saldo update that's working through the adoption process now. So we're, again, learning from all of those individual saldos as we go. So now I'll hand it over to Eric to wrap up this section.
All right, and looking at the chart of all the projects for Better Built Environment, and we're mainly going to focus on the delayed, on hold, and completed projects as part of the chart review. And looking at the first one for Ambler and Pickering Field and Tennis Avenue, those were delayed, but we've made a lot of progress on those really in the last month. So I think they're pretty much back to on track. But for Pickering Field, we've developed a concept plan for enhancing pedestrian access around Pickering Field. And the Planning Commission has seen that and approved the preliminary design. And so now our designer, in this case, Kevin Chavou, is going to be doing a more detailed design of that to take back to the Planning Commission and ultimately to their municipal engineer. Tennis Avenue, we've done some preliminary work on that. Barry has some preliminary designs for that. It's a flood mitigation acquisition, so we need to have some more conversations with FEMA to better understand exactly what and where we can do improvements and new landscaping. So again, those are actually moving pretty well over the last month. We did complete the Collegeville First Avenue Park along the Perkiomen Creek. They identified a new boat launch, or actually it's an old boat launch that they found through a sewer project that they want to develop a park around. And so we did a concept plan for that. They approved that and they've passed that on to their engineer to do some detailed engineering and go for a 2040 grant in the future for that. The Lansdale Railroad Plaza, that's pretty much been a delayed project due to our own sort of internal design capacity. We do have a designer on schedule to be hired next month to fill that. But we did present on that a few months ago to the Planning Commission to review some of the field work observations that we had from last year, discuss some conceptual plans with them and ideas, and we're back and we're going to go to do 2 or 3 sketches for more detailed design ideas for that will take back to the borough for review. We did complete the Lower Merion Saldo testing. They spent the township the last few years drafting their subdivision land development ordinance. And much like we did with their zoning, we helped them test that. We engaged some local designers, local planners to look at some conceptual potential development sites to apply the standards of the Saldo. Through that process, they did identify some additional improvements to the ordinance, mainly around buffering and landscaping that they integrated into that. And they actually adopted the Saldo earlier this year. So another great process that we worked through with them. And then lastly, back to Lower Merion as well and Narberth with the mainline greenway, which is mainly a bicycle pedestrian plan. That's been on hold more from the township and other priorities. But we had a recent meeting with them to discuss their new planning assistance contract. And that's really evolved more into an active transportation plan now. A little bit bigger project that's going to involve a little bit more of our sections here at the Planning Commission. But that will be the priority item in their new planning assistance contract that will start in January of 2023.
Thanks, Eric. Drew's next.
Oh, you've got it. Okay, never mind. Good morning, everyone. Good morning out there in the ether. Climate change, resiliency, and sustainability. This topic or focus topic, as you've heard, has a lot of interest and a lot going on. And I want to just touch on 3 main projects. The first 2 I'm going to take together. And what's interesting about these 2, aside from the details of the project, is just the way the projects are proceeding. In the work program, if you'll remember, we had the Energy Conservation Overlay District Model Ordinance and the Renewable Energy Overlay Guidebook. And these are both intended to be resources for municipalities to help them promote energy conservation and to promote renewable energy. There's certain issues that need to be worked through in both instances, and we were putting these together. And part of what we were doing brought us together with DVRBC to talk to them about some issues. And over just a very short period of time, DVRBC brought up that they were working with Chester County on a utility grade solar energy guidebook. And they were also interested in updating the renewable energy framework and also looking at promoting small scale solar. And they said, let's all work together, which, you know, we're all about that. Collaboration is a good thing. But I think this underscores just how much is going on in southeastern PA with respect to energy conservation and promoting renewable energy, in particular solar. So just as I say, over a period of time, just a couple of weeks, we worked together with DVRPC and Chester County and worked out who's going to be doing what, but we're all sort of working on these things together. Montgomery County is going to take the lead on the Energy Conservation Overlay District Model Ordinance. Chester County is going to be taking the lead on the utility solar energy project. Utility scale solar is larger scale. It's the energy that's produced is sold on the market. It's not used like by a typical residence or a small business. And DVRPC is going to be updating the renewable energy framework with our input. And again, the collaboration I think is going to make these products even better, even stronger, even more user-friendly than if just we were working on them individually. So that was interesting to me that we started out with one idea and we ended up all working together, which was not anticipated. And the third project that I wanted to bring up, you heard about a little bit this morning, is the Norristown Dam hydroelectric facility. Back in 2017, if you remember, we hired Alden out of Massachusetts to do a feasibility study. And they said, yes, it's feasible. It's likely that you could generate some significant energy from a hydro facility on your dam. They said that the financial aspects were a little bit iffy. But since then, there have been some updates or upgrades with feasibility, and the turbines have become more efficient. We've had more options. I'm amazed at how many different brands and grades of turbines there are out there. So we're looking again at putting a facility on the dam. And the first step, or the next step in our case, is permitting. I've been told that the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, FERC, has the most complicated permitting process for hydroelectric facilities than any other renewable energy or green energy type facility. And I believe it. After getting a little bit into this, there's a permit and there's a license. There's options for all of them. If, depending on what we decide to do later on in the process with the dam, for example, we could get the permit and then sell the dam, with a value-added permit attached to it. If we want to do that, we have to decide that pretty much now and have an entity that can be sold along with the dam, some sort of authority, for example, along with the dam that holds the permit. So there's a lot of decisions to be made. It's a very complicated process. DEP, Army Corps of Engineers, Fish and Boat Commission, a bunch of different state level agencies are involved as well. And they can require us to do further studies. There are some studies out there, but they might say, well, what about the red-bellied turtle, or what about the whatever? And we have to provide a study for that. So we have, again, we've contracted with Alden. They're helping us through this process. We had our kickoff meeting a couple of weeks ago, and we're having weekly meetings to keep us on track and keep the project going, but it's very complicated. And then next or last, you can see most of our projects are on track. I do want to just mention a couple to you. These two I'll take together, the quarry reuse project and the household hazardous waste facility, since they're related. The fill operation is done at the quarry. Now we're involved with assets and infrastructure, trying to figure out the best uses for that site. And we want about 3 acres to put the household hazardous waste and recycling drop-off facility on at the quarry. The Fire Academy wants a few more acres to expand their facility, but that would leave about 40 acres for further development. And we're trying to figure out what's our best use there. You heard about the climate.
Did the county get that property, Drew?
Pardon me?
Has the county always owned that property?
We are acquiring it, or we acquired it from Glasgow, and they're filling it in. I think it might have been like a lease agreement, but it was a while ago. It might even be before I came to the commission. We had acquired several quarries because way back when it was the thing to do to fill them in as landfills. So. The climate action plan you heard about, but I do want to mention also the next step on the climate change vulnerability analysis. I skipped it. This is the project that John and Ellis and Jason worked on, looking at vulnerability to heat and flooding. We have 2 municipalities interested in working with us on implementation: Abington Township and Norristown Borough. Couple projects on hold. The stormwater BMP funding, we were looking for ARPA funding for that. And I think we're going to have to look elsewhere. Fortunately, the Growing Greener 3 was just announced, and there's some money there that we can go for, and the IIJA funding is available for that also. Patty's section in design is working mostly on the sustainable and green parking lot guidebook outreach. I think there the delay is simply staffing related. They were down a staff person for a while, but they'll be up to speed in a week or so. And the last to mention is the Schuylkill dredging project. We had initiated that at Norristown's request. We had some preliminary meetings. We contacted the surrounding upstream and downstream municipalities. Haven't had a lot of interest. We really can't move forward until we have those municipalities on board. So there was some behind the scenes discussions going on.
Does that have anything to do with the dam? I mean, would they impact one way or the other?
No, mostly it would be downstream from the dam, just trying to get more flood capacity in the Schuylkill. There could be some dredging of the dam pool. either way, since it's a run of the river dam, the water's constantly going over the top of the dam. The dredging wouldn't really affect it.
Would the school drainage program affect the Northtown Dam?
No, we can put a facility on that without.
You can do it out, you do the dam without the school.
Yeah, we can put the hydro facility on there without much impact.
Thanks, Drew. Derek.
Effective growth is basically growth management to maintain the quality of life in the county. We look at it from two perspectives, mainly in terms of development and redevelopment and how that can be done in the best ways possible. And then also from an open space and natural resource preservation perspective. One of the ways that we help with that from our agency is to develop model ordinances. And Marley will talk about the transit-oriented development model.
Okay, thanks. So as you know, we released a new model ordinance for transit-oriented development in October of last year, and we've moved on to the implementation and outreach phase. We've started with internally promoting it through social media and newsletter blurbs. We've also been accepted to present on the model ordinance at the APA conference in October, and also submitted an award nomination for this effort. It is getting noticed and incorporated into some municipal planning work, such as the Spring Mill Multimodal and Land Use Study came out this spring. Perhaps the biggest thing to mention is that we've created an audit tool for planners to use in evaluating existing zoning around a station and identify improvements or where there might be a disconnect between the current zoning and what the model recommends for that type of station. And that we've already started to use this and refine it through reviewing several municipal TOD ordinances that have come up recently. And next, our focus will be on a strategy for outreach to non-contract municipalities with station areas to make sure they're aware of this resource.
No, Bill.
Bill?
Thanks. Good morning, everybody. I just wanted to talk about 3 current open space projects that we're working on. 2 of these fall into the small but mighty category, and then there's one that's bigger than the other 2. But the first one on the far left is located at 465 Ron's Road. This is in Perkiomen Township. It's a 1.1 acre parcel that you can see there in green. This was a property that was affected by the floods last fall from Hurricane Ida. We currently have an agreement of sale on this property with the landowner. As you can see in this map, it's a great parcel for a couple of reasons. One, it's adjacent to existing county-owned open space to the north and to the east. And it's also immediately adjacent to the Perkiomen Trail, which you can see there in yellow. And then in blue is a trailhead for the Perk Trail on Ron's Road. So it's going to be a nice addition to those existing assets. And we hope to close on that in the next 60 days or so. The second project is the Deep Creek Learning Center. That's the parcel shown in red there. That again is also a 1.1 acre parcel located in Upper Frederick Township. This is also adjacent to a number of county assets, including, as you can see in green there, a lot of county-owned land. To the west and north is Green Lane Park. This sits right at the bottom of Green Lane. And it's also adjacent to the Perkiomen Trail, which you can see in orange there, that makes its way up toward the parcel and then cuts into Green Lane Park. Once the structure is demolished, and I should mention that the structures on the Ron's Road parcel will also be demolished. Once we demolish the existing structures on the Deep Creek learning parcel, we will have a trailhead for the Perkiomen Trail, and it will just be used generally for open space as well. And we're just about to enter into an agreement of sale with that. It's going to the commissioners next week at their meeting.
What are the streets there? Is that?
It's Perkiomen Avenue and Deep Creek Road. Perkiomen Avenue goes out to the east, and Deep Creek is the one that goes north-south. And then the last project you're all familiar with, that's Camp Laughing Waters. This is a conservation easement purchase. This is 455 acres, so it's a giant
easement acquisition. We've been working with Natural Lands on this. The county's contributing $2.7 million toward that acquisition. They also received $500,000 from DCNR to help fund this purchase, and we hope to close on that either later this year or early next year.
Thanks. And back to Eric. So we know the school district enrollment studies completed by the county planning section. There was a bit of a slowdown with these right after COVID hit. School districts had much more pressing priorities to deal with. But in the last year, we have seen an increase in these. We're actually just completed 4. We're wrapping up a 5th, and we're in discussions with a few school districts now to complete a few more.
Those schools, I forgot, they're online, right? You can get those reports?
I believe they are. They are. We probably are behind on getting the most recent ones up, but they collectively have been put there. Good reminder. Webmaster. Sorry. Yes, sir. So the chart, just looking at a couple of the projects. The first one, the Moore Park Master Plan, that is on hold with Upper Marion. They're currently working through the draft comprehensive plan that we prepared for them, and the supervisors are trying to decide how to proceed with that, as well as the implementation projects of the comprehensive plan, of which the master plan was one. So that is currently on hold, mainly with the township. We did complete the return on environment study that was completed in May. We're in the process now of finalizing the summary brochure for that and developing the outreach strategies to both municipalities and conservation organizations. We did present that to each of the 4 regional planning commissions, and they were very interested in it and excited to integrate those findings into the comprehensive plans, the one that's being drafted now for the Upper Perk and the ones that are going to be drafted probably for the other regions over the next year or 2. Sorry. That's right. The Trails and Open Space Strategic Plan is delayed, mainly just competing priorities internally, but they're looking to re-engage with that plan later this summer. And it'll be good to integrate the findings of the return on environment study to that as well, and looking to complete that in the first half of next year. Circle of Progress Master Plan with Pottstown, that's just on hold. They're working on their downtown zoning right now and other municipal priorities. But that was a medium time frame, and so if we get that started in the next year or so, we'll be on time with that one.
Do we ever check our forecast on the schools and what we did 5 years ago, 6 years ago to where it is now? We have that check system out there?
Yep.
Yes, we certainly have repeat customers who come back to us for updates, and at that point, definitely check to see how our work has held up. A lot of the time, our predictions are pretty accurate, so. Housing attainability. So I will say housing is still definitely a priority for us. So don't be alarmed when you see all of the delayed, on hold slots on the next slide. But this is something that the Planning Commission is still definitely working on. The Homes for All plan that we finished last year, I think has been a real catalyst for us, even though we are still seeing headlines like homelessness doubles, housing prices are going up. A lot of these things are much bigger than what this office can really tackle on its own, but we are committed to continuing this work. Next slide. So as I mentioned, we do have some projects that are delayed and on hold. The characteristics of new housing study is dependent upon the US Census Bureau, and they have not released the data that we need to do this report. I will say though that I continually get feedback from people who tell me how useful it is to them and their work. Just the other day, a developer said, I use it all the time. The information is really helpful. I bring it to municipalities to show them the analysis that you've done, and I hope to update it soon. So it is definitely a useful product, and we do intend to update it soon. Data report integration with Homes for All is something that will be ongoing for us. That is just basically making sure that we incorporate in some information about Homes for All and the goals of that plan into the housing reports that you're used to seeing from us at this point. Our housing price study, our construction reports, so on and so forth. The one thing I wanted to definitely highlight though is our ongoing partnership with the Commerce Department and the Office of Housing and Community Development. We meet with them on a regular basis to make sure that the work that we're doing is in conjunction with what they're doing. So on that note, the Homes for All staff structure is being worked on collectively with them. And we are also working with them on the Homes for All outreach and education. The Office of Housing and Community Development recently issued an RFP for a project that they're calling Changing Hearts and Minds. And this is something that we're going to be working on with them as well. They are looking to hire a consultant who will develop marketing materials and help us develop language that we can use to do just that, to work on overcoming some of the stereotypes and negative pushback that we get from communities and others on this idea that housing affordability is not what they're looking for. So that's going to be a big project for us going forward. We're working with DVRPC on a regional housing initiative. And I will get to the housing hub in a little bit when I talk about the data work that we're doing overall. And missing middle report is still definitely a project we want to work on. We're just a little bit short-staffed at the moment. Our school district projections have taken up a lot of our time, and the comprehensive plan work is a big place for our time as well. So with that, I'm going to pass things off to.
And I just want to emphasize on this, the partnership with Your Way Home and Housing Community Development Commerce Departments. We're currently have the three-prong approach that was presented to the commissioners a couple months ago. The outreach and education is first, but through our funding programs being put in place, hopefully with some ARPA decisions as well, that we're really excited about having a way to address this more tangibly. So I just want to make that clear.
Okay, so Bill is next with the show.
So I want to start by highlighting 3 projects that we've been working on. Okay, the first one being the Trail Junction Center, which a lot of you are familiar with. This is the structure the county owns at the intersection of DeKalb and Lafayette Streets right here in Norristown. In early 2022, we hired Seiler and Drury Architecture based out of Norristown to head up the effort to put together construction documentation for architectural and engineering plans to renovate this building. They've been awesome to work with, very intimate with the community. They just conducted all of their stakeholder interviews, which was an incredibly broad swath of people from the county to business owners to bicycle groups, you name it. They spoke to them. That just is wrapping up now. Our hope is that the architectural and engineering CDs will be completed by the end of this year. And our intent is to then move immediately into bidding this and going into construction next year and hopefully completing it by the end of next year. And as you know, this is a really important building and location because of its interface with the trail community at the Schuylkill River Trail. And when the Chester Valley Trail ties into that, into the Schuylkill River Trail, it's going to happen right there. So this is going to be an amazing facility, multi-use, very flexible. And we hope it's an asset for the community as well as those who use the trails. Next project I just wanted to give you an update on is the Cross County Trail through Erdenheim Farm. This one's been around for a long time. This is a super important trail segment for the Cross County Trail. This is delayed this year. We were hoping to get into design and engineering, but we're not there yet. There are really 3 pieces that we're working on right now, which you can see up on the slide. One is this flood wall that we're building up around a residence to deal with some rising base flood elevations as a result of putting in a pedestrian bridge as part of this trail project. That project for the flood wall has been delayed for a bunch of reasons, which if you want to learn about them, grab me afterwards. I'm not going to go into them now, but we're making progress, hoping to be finished in the next couple of months. We're also working heavily on the engineering plans. They're at 90%. We're working through some of the finer details with the farm on fencing and some of the other details of the trail itself. And then the other component that we're working on are all of these agreements. We have 4 amendments that we're making to existing agreements. We have just created a new license for right-of-way with DCNR. We're writing a new trail easement agreement, and we're extinguishing a trail easement agreement. So needless to say, we're working with the solicitor's office pretty heavily and hope to move through that process in the next couple of months. The goal is to wrap up engineering agreements, all of this stuff that we need to finish by the end of this year, early next year, and then put this out to bid and get it into construction in 2023. Last project I wanted to highlight was one that Brian Olzak has been heading up, and he just is finishing, which is the Cross County Trail East feasibility study. This was funded by a DVRPC TCDI grant. The goal was to identify preferred alignment for the Cross County Trail, basically running from where Welsh Road and Dreshertown roads meet at the top of Upper Dublin Township, all the way over to where it will connect into the Pennypack Trail. Most of this runs through Upper Moreland. This was a study that was done by NV5, a consulting firm out of Philadelphia, and they did identify a preferred alternative, which you see here. Again, if you want to learn more, there's more information on our website, or you can just talk to me. If you want to talk to a human, I'd be happy to do that. This was presented to the commissioners at their info session yesterday, and is going in front of them for acceptance next week at their public meeting. And then more broadly, just want to hit a couple of highlights here. Chester Valley Trail, another project that's been around for, oh gosh, a long time. We're really trying to wrap this up this fall. That's what the plan has been, but there is a possibility it's going to leak into 2023. I'll keep you posted. The big delay there is the PICO corridor and getting them happy with what we had designed and now adjusting it for what some of the requirements are. Again, if you want more detail, ask. Already talked about the flood wall construction, finished the safety improvements at the Turwood Road crossing into the Pennypack Trail. Let's see. We finished the Wissahickon Trail feasibility study and the Germantown Pike Bridge feasibility study, which we presented to you a couple of meetings ago. And let's see. We're moving into trying to find funding for funding the Germantown Pike Bridge for the Cross County Trail. We're making good progress with finding some federal money for that, and I'll keep you posted on that as we move ahead.
A lot of projects, Bill.
Yes, a lot of projects.
A lot of projects. I have to get back to work.
Yeah, sorry.
Matt, I'm going to burden you with the double time cue, but
Not a problem.
Good morning, everybody. Matt Popak presenting on behalf of the transportation section. Matt Edmond, who sends his regards. But we are happy to talk through some of our transportation evolution projects. I guess our summation would be for the first half of 2022, struggle yet progress. We faced both staffing challenges in our section and challenges of coordinating with everybody that it takes to get a transportation project out the door. So for Ridge Pike, for example, we have 4 different sections that are all in varying degrees of project delivery. But by this year's midpoint, all of them are at least moving forward. The picture you see on the screen here is section D, which we are happy to say is into construction. The county gave the contractor notice to proceed back in March. And while coordinating utilities in this particular stretch has been a challenge, we are getting Alan Myers out to start work next week officially to do some tree trimming and preliminary stuff. The other 3 sections, A, B, and C, basically between here heading west into Plymouth and Norristown, are all in various stages of engineering. Again, for further details, I can certainly be talked to after the meeting. Section B is probably the closest in Plymouth Township in front of the car dealerships. We're working hard to get those final environmental permits in so that we can get to construction probably either late this year or early next year. Sections A and C are both entering that final design phase at this point. Our transportation improvement inventory. I'm not sure if this has come up fully in any sort of meeting yet, but we've been working behind the scenes to basically take the map that you see before you, which is our TIP project map, and the maps that we have in our county comprehensive plans for future transportation projects, trying to combine them together and creating that next wave of project ideas and submissions from all around the county. All those spots that municipalities have been thinking about trying to do some sort of transportation project on it, to really turn it into our catalog of priorities. Montgomery County doesn't have a tool like this yet. We're working to build it out. Chester County and Delaware County do. If anyone wants to see what we're hoping to not just meet, but surpass in the future. We're currently going through the county comprehensive plans with a lot of assistance from our community planning section to catalog all the transportation priorities that are available. And we're hoping to reach out to municipalities later in the second half of this year to basically back check and make sure everything that's in their plans are still valid. We haven't made a lot of progress in the first half of the year, but we did have Andrew Turner join us a couple of weeks, almost a couple of months ago. And once he has been here and we've had a fully staffed section for about another week now, we've been able to pick up the pace and get going on this project. And the last project is actually a pretty interesting one for innovation. This is the on-road bicycle lane expansions and how we're working with our partner TMAs. Back in May, DVRPC board awarded 2-year travel options program grant to both partnership TMA in the northern part of the county and Greater Valley Forge TMA in the southern part, which is an innovative way for our TMAs to help municipalities identify and fund the addition of on-road bicycle lanes in their communities. So far, we are the first county that is trying to utilize their TMAs in this way to expand our on-road bicycle network. It's a major step forward with a lot more to come. We're expecting to have a kickoff meeting sometime this summer to discuss the next steps, but we're excited that they're on board and are going to help us implement a lot more like Montco and potentially even some smaller municipal scale bike lane efforts. On the rest of our transportation evolution, we don't have that much in Pedro Blue to talk about. I will note the Montco Pike study that was presented at last month's board meeting is functionally complete. We are expecting the final draft to be submitted by McMahon, I believe later today, for some final back checking before their contract is up at the end of the month. The two plans that you see on the table here, County Aviation and Strategic Plan, are delayed mostly just because of those staffing issues. We are starting to think about how the strategic plan is going to work, especially with SEPTA's Bus Revolution Regional Rail Master Plan efforts. I believe tomorrow night, SEPTA will be hosting their wrap up of their Bus Revolution community discussions to relay what they've heard from all the counties around the area and how the public comment process is going to affect how they are moving forward with their bus efforts. So stay tuned to that. We're hoping to have our strategic transit plan line up a little bit better with the ongoing SEPTA master planning efforts as well.
Thanks, Matt. Our last focus topic I'm going to lead off on with planning technology and tools. Web experiences has been a focus, a new Esri tool over the last couple of years that we've seen with the TOD ordinance and some others. This year, we've added one for local products, a Lower Southford sidewalk and trail analysis tool. In Pottstown, a tool to show mini grants that are awarded to the Pottstown Regional Partnership for park improvements. And we're currently working on a Montco Awards experience page and a larger web experience that will really encompass all of the work of the planning department. In fact, it may replace some of the aspects of our main website as far as being more intuitive and direct towards the public as far as how they learn about what we're doing. So that's also in the works, and Anastasia and Jason are working on that. With video utilization, Rita, if you have just 30 seconds you want to give us for the rest.
Sure. So we're consistently recording events and the MCPC board members to populate our YouTube channel, as well as creating promotional videos for all of our Planning Smarter events. We have 49 videos on our channel and have had approximately 4,000 views, which enhances our outreach efforts. These videos are used for social media as well as publications, as you'll see in the annual report. We are also exploring the capabilities of our green screen for video production. Next slide, please. On the table, I'd like to highlight the 411 database. We've successfully migrated it to Constant Contact. It has resulted in more efficient development and distribution of our HTMLs, and we are currently exploring social media capabilities within the platform. The transition from .org to .gov, which will be a huge undertaking for our communications section when it happens, is right now in the county's hands, and they have no timeline for the transition, but the IT department is testing internally within this department. And then I'll talk a little bit about the MCPC website content reorganization. We have established a committee and have been meeting on a regular basis. We've developed a template for a comprehensive, consistent page content. Our current focus is organizing the main navigation of the site. Our website is in the top 3 sites in the county as far as content. And so this is a tremendous undertaking, but we're tackling it. And I'll turn this over to Ann now to discuss the Planning Data Hub.
Yeah, I'll give Ann a break here. This is, we're seeking ARPA funds to get the, create data for the entirety of the county. So that's, we'll learn more about that next week. And then finally, the Planning GIS Hub is another aspect, and that ties into what I mentioned with Jason and Anastasia, the rest of the GIS department, in trying to get our greater outlets for our data uses. The signature initiatives, I'm not going to go through these, but this is where our large scale programmatic projects are. The monthly comp plan up top, we've been through some phases with that, and obviously our grant programs go on as scheduled. We're in the throes of the existing conditions report with focus topics that some of you have participated in already. There'll be more through the next couple of months. And then we'll get into the vision plan development next year. On the equity plan, that's really the only one that maybe is a little bit delayed. We're integrating that with the county's focus on equity countywide. And so we're kind of dependent upon that advancing. But there are internal discussions and a scheduled cyclic meeting time for staff already that are addressing issues under that topic. And then in the yellow is some of our programs, again, going on track. I'll close with ARPA and IIJA funding. This was kind of a wild card we knew at the beginning of the year, and certainly has taken some significant time as we prepared applications. New funding opportunities have opened up. And I will say that I'm pleased that it hasn't been too overwhelming. It certainly has taken away, but the benefits that we hope to get from it hopefully soon will be worth it. So that brings us up. Eric, I was going to give you a minute just on community contracts.
All right, sorry, triple time warning.
Well,
Yeah, so 10 community planners, 36 contracts, 4 regional contracts, a lot of work's being done. Just highlight a couple of these categories. So comprehensive plans, the Worcester comprehensive plan is out in draft form, working through the planning commission. We have drafts ready this fall, hopefully for Lower Providence and Abington. We just started one in Horsham Township, just had I think they're in their 3rd meeting coming up. Cheltenham Township is in about the middle of their comprehensive plan update. They had a really successful public outreach workshop last month. So those comprehensive plans are moving. We're also doing one for the Upper Perkiomen Valley region. Lots of subdivision land development ordinance updates completed and adopted or near adopted in Narberth, Jenkintown, East Greenville, New Hanover that were done mostly this year. We're working through Springfield, as you saw earlier, as well as Schwanksville, and hopefully those will be adopted later this year or next year. Lots of zoning, as we've done a lot of comprehensive plans over the last few years. We get to implementation, which include both the subdivision and the zoning updates. And so we're doing updates in zoning for North Wales, Lower Salford, Upper Moreland, East Greenville. We've done some really good work in Collegeville. We had a gateway ordinance adopted earlier this year for their downtown near Sinus College. And West Norton, we're implementing their Main Street vision plan that we completed a few years ago. That's in draft form. It's currently being internally tested, and we have some outside developers looking at it for comment as well.
Great job, Eric. And those are very important projects. So just to close, I do want to mention, we left out the core function projects as they kind of happen every day or are in tandem with some of these projects. But none of these projects are possible without the assistance of our graphics department, our GIS, our communications, our administration teams. Even if they don't have the projects that show up here, they're doing a lot of the work to help make this happen. And thanks to our staff. I don't think, the end result, seeing this all together, certainly we knew it was an ambitious work program for sure. There have been some unanticipated delays, but we anticipate that they're unanticipated. And I'm happy that I think the staff has done a tremendous job of keeping things in line and making these wins along the way. So I'll turn it back to Steve.
What do you do in your spare time?
What's spare time?
Well, we're running short on time, so is there any comments from board members on the work program update? Jonathan, Bob?
I'm glad to hear the update. It's good to keep everything on track. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Jonathan. Bob still?
No comment, Stephen.
Thanks, Bob. Anybody in the room? John?
I appreciate the update as well. It's informative. Thank you.
Charlie wants to know why you guys aren't getting more done.
Somebody's got it. crack the whip.
Thank you. And it's a lot of work, and I know you've been short-staffed in a couple of sections, and we appreciate the extra work that people are obviously doing.
So speaking of staffing, we'll move on to the director's report.
That is the lead on there. I'm going to start with some good news. And we had a round of our mid-year promotions. I want to acknowledge Simon Bernard was promoted to County Planner 2. John Miklos also promoted to County Planner 2. Claire Warner, a senior community planner now. Donna Fabry is a principal open space planner. And Marley Bice is promoted to assistant community section manager, and she'll be integrating that role as with the design section as liaison as well. We also are happy to announce, or well, we can't announce yet, but we do have an offer that was accepted for the assistant design section manager. It's going through the HR right now and for salary board action later this month. But we look forward to introducing you to that person next month. On the sad news, Dan Farina has announced his resignation. His last day is Friday. So he joined us in 2016, but will be leaving for DVRPC to become their senior freight planner over there. So we wish him all the best. And we'll miss him a lot.
What is a senior freight planner?
Dan will tell you all about it.
I'm more interested in the freight aspect.
Think about it as the movement of goods around you.
Yes,
Not
it's more than just.
Like-
It's more than trains and trucks.
Is it a logistics type of
To some
position?
extent, yeah.
So it'll be
Take care of
different
the
kind of
bees.
What's that, Bob?
Who's going to take care of the bees?
Well, we're working on that. And also,
Scott does in his spare time.
also one of our interns, Samantha Zrillo, her last day was yesterday. She's been a tremendous help with us, has worked on several projects especially within the open space section, doing a lot of research for some of those projects as well, and helping with Rob on some web creations. So we thank her if she's still here. We certainly appreciate all of her efforts and wish her the best in the future. And then, so our open positions include, we're interviewing still for an environmental planner. The county planner position will be posted to replace Dan, or to basically take his slot. Good news, we also had a vacant position has been vacant since reorganization a year and a half ago. A county planner position is being created to address staffing needs in both the data and comprehensive planning efforts in that section. So we'll be looking for that level of replacement as well. And we are right now awaiting a decision from the administration on adding a staff position to expand the community planning section, which, as you heard, is pretty robust. We have another municipality interested in our services that we don't currently have under contract, and the workload I think justifies the addition as well. So we're hoping to have good news on that as well next month. That's it on staff news, one of my longer ones. The APA state conference in October in Lancaster, we had a number of presentations accepted. So we will certainly be represented there. The planning for TOD will be there with Marley, Claire, Patty, and guest Charlie Guttenplan from White Marsh. Environmental vulnerability assessment with Jon Lesher will be a presentation. Anne and Donna Fabry are doing one on trail diversity and access, and the study that was produced last year. And then also we're partnering with Lower Merion on a couple of their submissions. Marley is helping out with the enhancing community engagement presentation. And Marley and Patty are participating in the creating privately owned community spaces through land development. So I'm glad it's not too far away because we'll definitely have a lot of people dropping in for that conference. The annual report you have distributed, if you are here, we'll send that out digitally. It is still in draft form. It's ready to be posted probably at the end of this week. So if you do see anything or have any comments, feel free to mention it. But there's just a couple tidiness items to add to that. The Schuylkill River Passenger Rail Authority kicked off officially and had its first meeting on July 6th. There are 3 board members of the 9 board member authority that are from Montgomery County. Ken Lawrence, who was elected as treasurer or commissioner. I, on the board, was elected as secretary, and Dave Zellers is also a board member. So that a lot of activity was generated from that first meeting to get up and running, and we'll be focused on the fall with creating an application to the FRA to get the rail service from Reading to Philadelphia into the corridor ID program, which will put us in the pipeline for capital projects. Well, planning projects first, and then we'll make that. And partnering with Amtrak on that. ARPA update. The draft plan will be released on Monday. We will have final answers or draft final answers on all of the 10 applications that we were involved with. The scoring had been released a couple weeks ago. I didn't do so well on many of those. I think they had an outside review team of citizens that they brought in. And I think it came down to a lot of how literally interpreted the guidelines from the federal statements were. And some of ours were kind of pushing the boundaries of what ARPA could be used on. So scoring does not dictate fundability necessarily. So we're anxious to see which of those projects might get funded. We do know there's a great ask based on what was submitted. So we expect some of that not to go through, but we're fingers crossed on a number of them. And we'll let you know. Montco 2050 update, focus groups upcoming, transportation and public health are on your events calendar that was sent out. And we're looking to plan some fall public outreach opportunities to really kick off the comp plan season and get the public involved and knowledgeable of what's going on. One other announcement, Growing Greener 3 was in the state budget. It's now called Outdoor Recreation Program. Like that's worse than bodies or.
Yeah, really.
But the good news is there's dollars attached to it, $100 million to be managed by DCNR for state parks and forest infrastructure, conservation and recreation projects that can be applied for. There's a newly created Clean Streams Fund funded with $220 million. And $320 million to the Commonwealth Financing Authority for water, sewer, flood, and high hazard dam projects. So I do want to shout out the Natural Lands brought it to our attention. Dulcie brought it to our attention. We worked with the commissioners and did some advocacy, and we're happy to if that support helped. Planning Smarter, we had June 16th in Pottstown successfully conducted on strategies to enhance walking and bicycling. Thanks to all who participated in that. And our next one is until October. Will be, I forget the location, but that'll be on the return on environment study. Future away meeting in October. We're planning for an away meeting in the Upper Perkiomen region. So we'll be hearing more about that and getting that in order. That brings me to the end of my report.
Right. So going forward, we will not have an August meeting. And we decided that our away meeting would most likely be in October, right? So just to give board members advance. So no meeting in August, and we'll be trying to schedule our away meeting in October. So with that, is there any other closing board comments before we adjourn? Bob, Jonathan, Charlie, Nicole, Dulcie, John. Okay, thanks everybody. Appreciate all the information and great work that we're doing. I appreciate it. So with that, we're adjourned.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Congratulations.